Welcome in, folks, for another episode of What's Bruin, brought to you by Dom.Hockey. I am joined by Gayle Trioni, as I was last week, and will be going forward. Gayle, how are you this week? I am pumped for this episode. We have so much to go over.
I am doing very well, thank you. I'm trying to log into my ESPN account.
Gotcha. Yeah, oh yeah, that's right. There's so many games going on today too. I mean, we got the OHL, championships. We got the NHL games going on, and crazy time for hockey. Despite the Bruins not playing,
Right.
but no worse time. I think we got the comments figured out this weekend too for the YouTube side of things. So if someone's watching on YouTube, I want someone to try and leave a comment.
It says live chat replay. Live chat replay was turned off for this video.
Kevin says the comments work. So
it says comments are turned off.
That's weird.
Oh no, wait. Never mind. That's the wrong one. That's the old one. Hold, please.
Yes. We got Hassan in there as well. Yes, a belated but happy Mother's Day to you, Gayle.
Thank you.
All the mothers were able to enjoy it. Did you guys do anything fun for it?
Well, my wonderful 14-year-old daughter made me a breakfast snack in bed, like she does every year. And then we have our brunch every Sunday. And then we went and saw my mother-in-law, and then we went out to dinner. So it's just a nice day.
Just a nice day where you don't have to worry about covering a bad hockey team. That helps. And the good thing for you, too, is you don't have to cover the Department of Player Safety.
God. Oh, my God.
So when do they get to lose their jobs?
It's never going to happen, but they should. I don't understand the whole... First of all, the cross-check to the face is only a fine. You can't tell me that wasn't deliberate.
Yeah. I mean, he was going for the puck. Air quotes around going for the puck.
Up here? Going for the puck up here?
I thought I saw the puck on the ice. So, maybe
double-fisted.
His last it got, I don't know.
Double-fisted, hit him in the face. Yeah, that's going for the puck.
He was seeing double? I don't know. Test him for a concussion at least. Like, I don't know. At this point, and then we have what is or isn't a goal.
Well, that one to me, that went off a Hellebuck. That should have been a goal.
Okay, but here's where I just now I agree with the premise. The way that particular play played out, that should be a goal. I agree with that. However, because if you go back and listen to what the on-ice official said, the on-ice official and the league have both admitted he kicked the puck. And then if you look at the rule, the only stick that is an exception to the deflection rule is the goaltender stick. So by their own admission, it was a kick. Therefore, once it hits Hellebuck's stick, it cannot be a goal. Regardless, and there's nothing in the rule that distincts, was he kicking it towards the net or was he kicking it towards behind the net? There's no distinction of whether it was in the dirt, in the circles, in the blue paint, anything like that. It just says a distinct kicking motion, and did it go in the net or not? And based on the rules, it's not a goal through the NHL's own admission that it was a kick. I agree. I don't think it was enough of a kicking motion in this instance, but that's not what the league said. So that's where I sit there and I go, based on their own ruling, it was a kick, and the rule book says that it's not a goal based on the fact that it went off Hellebuck's stick. This is, in my opinion, not the best example to run with that argument because I agree it should have been a goal, but that's not what their rule says.
But the problem is that it doesn't matter what the rule says because half the rules, they don't go by them anyways.
Right.
When it comes to goaltender interference, when it comes to kicking motions, it's all, they're like, well,
Well, that, and you can hack a rec, you can hack a shack at refs, and as long as the ref goes, it wasn't personal. Like,
well, and that's the whole thing. Like, he tapped him, and the ref said that it wasn't even, that Yes, he got his attention, but wasn't like a full-fledged like bam. Yes,
Yeah.
the rule strictly says you are not supposed to touch a ref. He touched an official, should have, but they were like, we didn't think about it, we didn't care about it, so therefore we're not going to pursue it.
Right. Now let's
It's
put a shoe
one
on
of
a
those
different
things.
foot here and say, imagine if that had been Brad Marchand. The
Well, but you know,
outrage.
take the player out of it, because that's the whole thing. You take the player out of it, the Leaf fans are like, "Oh, Max Domi, who cares? He hit Barkov." But then Leaf fans are also like, "Oh, but Sam Bennett did this." So you can't have it both ways. It's either you call it or you don't call it, and then that's the end of the story.
And that's the part where I go, I don't give a flying fuck about your whataboutism. Yeah, the Domi hit on Barkov was bad. So was the Bennett hit. Just because they screwed up how they punished Sam Bennett doesn't mean they should screw up how they should punish Max Domi. Like, you know, with that, how many they screwed ups are we going to go back? Are we going to go all the way back to Matt Cook? Because, like,
But that's the problem with the league, is that there's no consistency. There's no consistency from shift to shift, never mind
no,
game to game. There's
right.
no shift to shift consistencies with, or, what they won't call in what they'll call in the first period, but they won't call in overtime. That makes absolutely no sense. If it's a penalty in the first period, it's a penalty in overtime. If it's a penalty in preseason, it should be a penalty in the regular season. If it's a penalty in the regular season, it should be a penalty in the playoffs. I don't give a crap about, oh, well, it's the playoffs, let them play. No, because
Yeah.
that's the fans' biggest problem. If you call it consistently, then there's no backlash from the fans. Well, why is it a penalty? A cross check to the face, regardless, should be a suspension.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You cannot tell me that that was not intentional.
Right.
I don't care. And I don't care if it was Matthew Tkachuk that got cross-checked in the face. I don't care if it was Austin Matthews. It doesn't matter that it was Trent Frederick. A cross-check to the face is a cross-check to the face.
Right. It's equally as dangerous, regardless of what the outcome is. The action itself is
Right.
equally as dangerous. And on top of that, if you are consistent in calling those things, the whataboutisms go away.
Right.
Because, oh, well, what about when Nicholas Waugh did it? Well, if he got suspended, the next time someone else does it, they get to go, yeah, and we suspended his ass too. Like,
right.
It
Well,
becomes a lot more
but they're
fair.
also, but they're not consistent in their suspensions either, because they do say, well, this person has a history, this person doesn't. They can't do that anymore. They literally it needs to be black and white. A cross check to the face is a minimum 1-game suspension. Now, if the person has a history, it could be more, you know what I mean? But it has to be no more of this league, of the maximum allowable fine by the CBA.
Oh my God.
A cross check to the face should 100% should be a minimum 1-game suspension.
And with the cap going up, are those fines going up too?
Right. Well,
so,
and
I like.
And Boston game is 100% correct. The fact that non-Bruins fans are now standing up for Brad Marchand is completely hilarious.
Oh, it's absolutely hilarious. But I will say, none of them has had as bad a day as Leon Draisaitl knocking in the game-winning goal with 0.4 seconds left. But
that's not Draisaitl's fault. That's Stuart Skinner's fault. Let's get the facts straight. Stuart Skinner should never play again. Did you see that tweet? He should never play again.
Yeah.
Never.
Well, when did it stop being okay for multiple things to be correct or to be true at the same time? Like, yes, Stuart Skinner misplayed that puck. He misplayed it. Does that mean
I disagree? I disagree.
I mean, the goal is.
I don't think the puck was going wide. The puck was going wide. It was Draisaitl. If Draisaitl didn't touch that puck, it wasn't going in the back of the net.
Right. Okay, let me rephrase. He could have played it better. Let me put it that way.
Yes.
He could have played it better. Was it an outright, I screwed it up and I cost my team? No. So, but he could have played it better. And that's one of those things where when you look at the the Patrick Wads, the Marty Brodeurs, the Dominic Hašiks. They're the ones that when they go back and they look at that kind of tape, they're going to go, I got to play it this way instead. I can't make it that
because
play
you
the
know
same
what?
way.
They've each done it. Patrick
Right.
Waugh misplayed a puck in 2001 that cost them a game.
Mm-hmm. But they take
He
it personally,
100%
so they make sure they don't do it again.
Against the
Right.
Devils, he cost them a game because he misplayed a puck. Just like Tim Thomas in 2011 against Vancouver, he misplayed in game 2. You know what I mean? Like every goaltender has done it. It's not that Stuart Skinner's any better or any worse than any other goaltender. Every single goaltender has misplayed a puck that has cost his team a game.
Right. And again, it's not a matter of he made a bad play. There was a better option. He could have stayed a little further in his crease. The side-to-side movement wouldn't have been as extreme, and he would have been able to get a hand, a blocker, something on that puck so it doesn't cross the crease. Now,
Right.
if Leon Draisaitl is, I don't know, playing a body as opposed to crashing his own net, it doesn't go off of him. That being said, let's also admit that the play itself was lost by Winnipeg, or was it Winnipeg? No. Oh crap!
Vegas.
Mixing up. Thank you, Vegas. When they had 3 people watching as William Karlsson comes in on the forecheck and gets to the puck and passes it back out cleanly.
Listen, maybe it's karma for them missing the penalty in the game that Connor McDavid completely undressed Jack Eichel. You know what I mean?
But that's where it comes down to
maybe it's karma for the Oilers, you know, that they should have been on the penalty kill in that game.
I do have to say, I love Kenny's comment. We're talking about the cross check to the face, and Kenny goes, maybe he just has his eyesight isn't good.
Yeah. He thought the puck was in Trent's mouth.
Yeah, you know, misguided mouth guard is all it was. Kevin says, I know how to fix this. Just let them kick the damn thing moving forward. Boom, done.
I didn't even realize that was Kevin.
Oh, yeah, no, that's Kevin.
Earlier.
And then doesn't take them so long. That's the other thing is it took them, almost 10 minutes to figure out?
That was horrible. That was
that's just bad.
Horrible. Yeah.
Kevin says, goalies are fair game. Goalies are fair game, bulldoze them.
Listen, we kind of talked about that last time about the fact that if they're outside the crease, is it just like a quarterback being outside the pocket? You know what I mean? And I understand that you want to protect your goalies, but if they're outside the crease, then at what point do we say that, yes, they are?
If you want to make the crease a safe space, it's a safe space, but nowhere else is. You can't have gray area when it comes to that. But let's see. And then he said, well, Martian and their goalie thing, people were actually standing up for him online. Yeah, no, like you said, the fact that they are starting to stand up for Brad Marchand now and everybody hated him before, like, it's that old meme with the guy going for the hang and he just looks over your first time, huh?
Yeah.
Let's see. Bruins mate says, is it just me or does Ekblad look like he's on steroids, flying elbows every hit? Well, maybe because he's not on the juice anymore. He needs to lead with a different body part. I don't know. And then says Skinner's been absolutely awful. Look at the playoff games when Picard plays. It's night and day. So I've never seen a disparity like this where one goalie is undefeated and the other one can't get a W, but that win was not on Skinner, or that loss rather. Skinner should actually get the game regardless of Picard's health. I've heard he's going to miss, I think it's tonight, just because he's still not healthy. But until Stuart Skinner looks like crap again, because he did not look like crap in that game. Again, could he have played the final puck a little bit better? Sure. That doesn't mean he cost them the game. In fact, he was the reason they were in that game. So, and we saw it last year too. He came out, Picard went in for a couple games, and then when Skinner came back, he was practically lights out until like the final round. So he can do it. It's just maybe. We got Matrix back in the chat saying I haven't watched a single game since 3 days after the trade deadline. That'll come up a little bit later, that trade deadline. Kevin says, even if you're quarterback in the pocket, you get mauled. Yeah, it doesn't mean they
Right,
don't kick. They
but
don't. They don't
you could
call it.
still you could get sacked, but there is still roughing the passer inside the pocket. I mean, there's still a clear, just like, there's late hits in hockey, the same thing. Those things happen.
Mhm.
So yeah, 100%. I get what you're saying about a quarterback being in the pocket, but there's still, I mean, you could still have a goaltender get nailed inside the crease, and it could be, goaltender interference, just like roughing the passer. But when a quarterback's outside of the pocket and they're running up the field with the football and they get hit, it's not considered roughing the passer.
Right. They should be as eligible to be hit as much as the running back as soon as they get the handoff. So,
Right.
and then as he says,
Yeah.
Leafs fans will always hate Marsh, and that'll never change. Absolutely. Until he
Oh, well,
plays for
yeah.
them. Until he plays
Yeah.
for them, they will always hate
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
So, and
Well,
then Aaron, OG
Florida
watcher.
fans hated Florida fans hated Marchand until he started playing for them. And at first they were like, "What? We don't want him. We don't want him." And now they're like, "Oh, wait a minute. He's kind of clutch."
Yeah. And then Steve jumps in. If Bobrovsky continues to play like he did last game, the Panthers will win the cup. Well, I mean, it helps that he had a shutout, but I would go so far as to say one of the leading candidates, in my opinion, if not the leading candidate. I know everybody's talking about Mikko Rantanen, but nobody is realizing just how good Frederik Andersen has played for the Hurricane. If you go back and look and see just what he's doing to keep them in games, and you saw a night and day difference between when he's in goal and when Kochekhov's in goal. He missed the one game, but it was a world of difference. And they as a team have allowed fewer goals than teams that have been already eliminated. So he's doing something right. Again, I know
Oh,
Rantanen's getting all the love, but
I
Anderson
would
deserves some too.
I would actually love to see a Canes Panthers Eastern Conference final. I think that would be a hell of a series.
It would be. I mean, at this point, any of them would be very good
No,
series
no,
just
no,
from what we're
not Toronto.
seeing.
Not Toronto.
But
Not Toronto. Nope, 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 not Toronto.
yeah, it just doesn't sound right. Toronto Maple Leafs in the conference
No,
final
because
just
even if
doesn't.
Toronto goes up against Carolina, they cannot beat Carolina. They can't. They're they're not going to beat Florida. They can't beat Carolina, and they're not going to beat Washington. So I just think that Florida Capitals, Florida, Carolina. I pick Florida, Carolina would be the best series coming out of the East.
Yeah, I think so. It would be. It would certainly be. It's. I think it's the one that I have in one of my brackets. Um, it just. I don't know. The Leafs might get lucky, but I don't know. I just don't
But
see it.
unless Stolars can come back, Joseph Woll is not the answer.
He's played well. He's played well. I don't think it'll come down. I don't think goaltending will be their problem. I'll put it that way. Whether they win or lose, it's not because of their goaltending. Whether it's Joseph Woll or Anthony Stolars. We saw last year, Joseph Woll can be a top goaltender in the playoffs. He can be. That
That was
being
last
said,
year.
but that doesn't
That was
mean he's
last
going to
year
be the reason they
because
lose either.
Jeremy Swayman was like had like a 9 whatever again
Oh, he was
in the first
ungodly.
round of the, you know what I mean? So I mean, you can't. That's last year. You can't compare year to year. You got to look at the statistics right now.
Yeah, and then Kenny says goaltender interference is messed up in the AHL too. I don't know if you caught that Providence game. We will come back to that in just a minute. If you brush the goalie, it's a penalty, but somehow that first goal yesterday counted against the Bruins.
Well, he couldn't even move.
Couldn't they have challenged that? Like, I'm not 100% versed in all of the AHL rules and regulations for a coach's challenge, but I'm pretty sure they're very similar to the NHL, and they could have challenged that.
Yeah, because I
So,
remember seeing, I don't know if it was someone posted, why didn't they challenge that? So I don't know. I don't know.
but Kevin then says, I like the idea of just contact outside the crease being allowed, and has to be Florida. I want that first round pick. So, I mean, at the end of the day, neither team is Boston, so you got to root for what's going to help your team the most. And it's okay if they still don't advance to the final. That's okay. So, I'll take the first round pick. Now, anything else that's not Bruins related before we dive into the bees?
The Worlds.
Oh yeah, that's right, the Worlds.
I mean, but that is kind of Bruins related because we want to talk about the Worlds because of
And then Kevin
the
asks,
players.
did the P Bruins win yesterday? No, Kevin, they did not.
No,
Actually, they
they
are
got
eliminated
eliminated.
from the Calder Cup playoffs. They actually played like absolute dog shit. There was
At one point they were
no,
outshot 20-1.
and that was in halfway through the second period. It wasn't like, oh, this team just came out of the gate and fired, 20 shots on goal in the first period and just had the puck all the time. No, 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 no. They had 8 shots all game, as Kenny points out.
It was horrible. Yeah, it was horrible. They had the same disease that the Bruins had of not knowing when to shoot the puck.
Yeah, at least they made it a series being down 2-0. Sure, absolutely. But there was either no gas left in the tank whatsoever, or there was a lot. I don't think Poitras got hurt. He just took a rough hit that should have been called an interference.
But he got up.
But he got up, yeah. I mean, maybe there's something small, but they just looked like dog shit. I don't know if it was nothing left in the tank, the lineup jostling, or whatever. It just, you can't come out like that in a game 5.
Yeah.
But Worlds, they lost Don Zlachmelis to Worlds, and he's centering Latvia's first line.
Yeah,
doing a hell of a job at it too.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. Where was it?
I
want you to point out. In 2 games, he's played in 2 games. He has 2 goals and 1 assist.
It's almost like he might be good.
Yeah. Well, they don't know how to draft though.
No. So especially he was what? He was what? 4th round draft pick? 4th? Did I hit 4th?
So he has 2 goals and 1 assist. Elias Lindholm has, hold on, I just had him. Where'd he go? Because I got out to go look at come on. There we go. Elias Lindholm is picking up right where he left off, 1 goal, 3 assists. So he has 4 points in 3 games. Jeremy Swayman yesterday had a 13 save shutout. But today, Joey Decord did not play well. They lost. They lost today.
Well,
and obviously, so let's see.
But that's Swayman's fault anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure it's Swayman's fault. Mason Lohrei in 3 games has 1 goal and 2 assists.
Okay.
Let's see. Who else? Andrew Peak. What has he done so far?
I mean, he's more of a stay-at-home kind of shutdown defenseman versus more of a scorer, so I'm less worried about his offense. But, I mean,
no, I'm just looking to see what he's done. Andrew Peak has an assist. In 3 games, has an assist, 2 penalty minutes, and is a +1. So
I'll still take that though. Like,
Peaker's doing well.
Yeah, it's still not bad. I would gladly take those numbers for a stay-at-home shutdown kind of defenseman that Peak is.
All right. And of course, David Pastrnak. In 3 games, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points.
I think he's pretty
2
good.
2 game-winning goals. But, the turnovers.
Oh, yeah. Got to trade him because of the turnover. And Kenny says Tage Thompson is making an awful case to make the Olympic team. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of talent for most of the nations out there that are going to be in the Olympics. It really
Jacob
comes down
to...
to...
has an assist.
What's that?
Jacob Lauko even has an assist.
Yeah. It really just comes down to the best mix of players, as we saw with the Four Nations face-off. Like, I mean, is Jordan Binnington the best Canadian goaltender in the league right now? Probably not. But he's the best one for that kind of tournament.
Right.
Like, it is. Like, he almost had them upsetting the Winnipeg Jets in the first round.
Oh, wait, I lied. No, wait, today's not the 11th.
No, it's the 12th.
Today's the 12th. USA got shut out 3-0 by Switzerland.
Yeah, that was the Court game, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what you said. You didn't lie.
Yeah.
You might have said it was today, but it was yesterday. But no. Yeah. No, you mistruth. That's all. But last episode, we were talking about the Bruins lineup for the upcoming season. And what it might look like. And so today I figured we would continue that conversation, but actually try to put together something. So I pulled up our old friends over at Puckpedia here, so we can try to hash this out. Definitely want people's thoughts in the comments as well as we run through this. I think it's very important, as we were talking about it last week, to remember that the team's goal is to put together the best team to make the playoffs immediately. They are not looking to take a step back and miss the playoffs by, even a game or 1 year or anything like that. So as much as I would love to see, say, Don Zlotch-Mellis maybe take that left wing third line spot and say, take the step back and see what he can do, I just don't see them doing that to make that goal realistic of getting back in the playoffs.
I agree.
I agree. He might steal the job, but that doesn't mean you're going to look at it and go earn it at a camp. He has to come in and say, no, I came into camp because that's my job. So there's a little bit difference there. So we'll work our way down. This is just who's currently listed with contracts. We'll be able to go through some of the contract stuff as well. So for instance, right now, I think we are both pretty much in agreement that top line is going to be Pastrnak, Lindholm, and Morgan Geekie.
Yeah, as long as they sign him, which they're gonna. I have no question that they'll sign him.
So then the question becomes Geekie's contract. Now, for the sake of our discussion of the lineup, I would say let's err on the side of the potential highest dollar amount. The term doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, for an exercise like this, a 5-year, 6-year, 7-year deal, who gives a shit? Doesn't really matter. Well, it affects next year.
My thought is 5 to 6 years for anywhere from $5 to $6 million.
I was going to say, I could see them going with a 6x6. And that would be like their high end. Anything above that becomes a little bit more, okay, what's the 7th year look like? Like, how we'll do it that way, but you have to construct it the way we want, something like that. But that would be a 6x6. I would do that.
Right.
So for the sake of this exercise, we can pencil them in with that nice little 6x6 on the on that top line there. And then the second line, I know we've talked at length. Who's going to center the second line? Do you see it being Casey Middlestead? Do you see it being Matthew Poitras? What direction do you see that going in to start the year?
Either Zacha or Middlestead.
Who would be,
unless Zacha ends up on your wing, and then I would rather, instead of Middlestead, I would rather Zacha, Poitras, Lysell.
So Zacha, Poitras, Lysell maybe as your second line.
Yep.
And then what would you do? Kick Middlestead with Fraser Minton and they would have to re-sign Lauko for that third line. Or who would be your third line right wing?
Um,
Would you essentially give it to Jacob Lauko, or are you trying to put him on your fourth line? I look at him as more of that fourth line role.
well, it depends also on what they decide to do with Kepke. If they decide that they can get Kepke for low dollar, he can do left or right. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then you have on your fourth line, you have Beecher, because I really believe that they're going to extend Beecher. If they're going to offer him, at least and I think because he had such a down year, and yes, we talked yesterday or last week, I should say, about the fact that he was injured. So you kind of took away from, his production. So I don't think that he moves up. I think he stays on your fourth line. And then you have the option of Beecher with Kastelik, and then you either can do Kepke on that side or um
See,
I don't know.
his Beecher's contract is only 875 grand for his qualifying offer, and I
Mm.
was not a fan of how he played this year. But once you factor in that injury, I just don't see how, with how that line, the Beecher, Kastelic, Kepke line started, I don't see
Mhm.
how you try to not have that replicated at least to start the year.
Right, but Kepke is also a UFA, so it also depends on, you
And
know,
that's the qualm I have with it. Do you think you could get something similar out of Jeffrey VL, who's already under contract for next season?
I don't know.
Like,
I don't know. That's a tough one because when you look at
and that's why I don't see Riley Duran making the team out of camp.
oh, we forgot about Husadinov.
Yeah, well, he's still an unrestricted free or a restricted free agent that they have to sign. We would
Yeah,
also
but
have
I
to.
think they're gonna bring him back too.
I think so too. Do you see them giving him much more than his qualifying offer?
No,
I'm just looking up what that.
maybe like a little bit of an increase, but not.
Yeah, so
I
his
wouldn't. I
qualifying
wouldn't.
offer, let's see, this year he earned 925K. His
Right.
qualifying offer is 875, so maybe they just split right in the middle at 900.
I don't see him getting. I don't see him getting a like less. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
I
I
don't see
mean,
him getting less than what he made this year.
the only reason why he would get less is if they just go, here's your qualifying offer, nothing more. We want to see more for a year. But
Yeah, but they could give him 950 instead of 925. You know what I mean?
there's no need to do that. We'll just pencil him at the same 925. Um, See, that's where I go. I think he could be also on that fourth line. I like his speed on the fourth line. And when you really go back and look at what he did offensively this year, it really wasn't much. He got the adrenaline bump from being on a new team, but that fizzled out. And when that fizzled out, it was a lot of Chris Kelly look-alike, missing the net, incomplete shots. Like, it just was not, it wasn't great. Now, he's still young, he can turn it around, but I really think he's
I also don't have a
got a little
I
lower.
also don't have a problem with him being a Chris Kelly.
No, I don't either. But I feel like if you have him on your fourth line with Beecher and Kastelic, you could rotate in a guy like VL. You could rotate in a Tufty based on your matchup because he has that speed.
Right.
Beecher and Hustanidov are both extremely speedy wingers. And Kastelic showed that he has a little bit of that wherewithal to be able to set those kind of guys up. Beecher,
Right.
we know, can't finish. The question is whether or not Hustanidov can. But I know a lot of people are just penciling him in on the third line, which I don't know if that's the right spot for him.
But I have no problems with him being on the third line. I have no problems with him being on the third line or the fourth line. I don't think
Me
that
neither.
I think that the sample size was so small that starting him on the third line isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Could he be your 13th forward?
As opposed to who?
A Patrick Brown or a VL or someone who you
No,
know is a fourth line guy,
I would
or
I would put
Lauko.
him in I would put him in before Patrick Brown.
That's my point. Could he be your? Because so far in all of this, we're just working with the players that the Bruins have. Now, if they go out and they sign a Mitch Marner, for instance, well, now Zacha is certainly not on your left wing or on your second line left wing. You know what I mean? Now, are you shifting Zacha to third line and you doing a Zacha Middlestead Hustadinov line on your third line? Like, you go in and you disrupt this with another game breaker like a Mitch Marner.
Right.
You know, I just kind of threw Fabian Lieselen on the second line right wing, barring them going out and getting Mitch Marner. I think that's where he's at. If they can get someone like a Mitch Marner, he very easily slides to that third line.
Right, but we also the whole reason why we wanted to do this exercise was to talk about the players that they have, not who they could
Right.
possibly get. Because you could throw any name in there. You
Right.
know what I mean?
So
You could say that Brad Marchand signs an extension with the Bruins in the offseason.
don't get
And
people's
then
hopes up. Don't get people's hopes
and
up.
that
No, that's not
changes
happening.
everything. But that's what I'm saying. Like Mitch Marner's not happening.
Let's see.
Mitch Marner is not happening.
So just filling it out, and I'm not sure how comfortable I feel about it either. Hustadinov on the right side of the third line. I have Fraser Minten in at the third line center. Is there anybody else on the roster that you'd put in that spot right now?
No, unless if Fraser or Casey. I mean, because then you have literally they both can play the wing or center, so it's perfect. It's almost like Coyle and Frederick. You know what I
The
mean?
the
Where
biggest
one could
issue,
step in.
yeah, the biggest issue I see with this third line though is they're all left-handed.
But okay, look at your top line.
And they're all right-handed. Yeah, that's
And that's what Pasternak said. It actually worked out better because of you know what I mean? It doesn't
yeah.
matter if they're all left-handed or if they're all right-handed. It
Yeah, I
doesn't
mean, no
matter
one,
as long
no
as
one
they have the
cares that
chemistry.
no one cares that
Right,
Pasternak shoots right-handed. He's one of the best forwards in the game.
right.
Are you are you going to sit there and go, I don't want to put Alex Ovechkin in my lineup because he shoots right-handed, but he wants to play the left
Right,
side? Like,
right,
no, talent wins out. So
right.
Kevin says, man, that team blows.
It does. 100%. They have a
As
lot of holes. They don't have enough secondary scoring.
no,
100% to not have secondary scoring.
no, absolutely, and that's kind of the whole point because again,
But
based on who's
they're not gonna sit pat. They are going to get a free agent. I just don't believe it's Mitch Marner. You know what I
right,
mean? I believe that they are going to land a scoring free agent. I just don't think it's gonna be Mitch Marner. I don't think they
I
can afford Mitch Marner.
I don't think it's worth going for a Mitch Marner because the last thing you want to do, you have, people want to complain about the Elias Lindholm contract. Okay, that's fine, but then you want to go out and spend, 6 million more on Mitch Marner and then put them both on the same team. That's how you become the Toronto Maple Leafs of the last 5 years. Plus, you
There's
compound
a Yeah,
problems
but
with that.
there's also a big difference between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Boston Bruins and the
Oh yeah,
culture.
absolutely. There's a big difference there, but when it comes to the abilities to Toronto should have traded William Nylander years ago. He was the right one to trade. Granted, Austin Matthews should be on his way out the door at this point, but Kevin says, so how much do you think the Bruins are going to sign Mitch Marner for? Directing that question to you.
It's not happening, Kevin. I'm not answering that because I do not believe that they're going to sign Mitch Marner.
Now, I'm also taking a small liberty here. I don't think they pay Lauko his qualifying offer. I think they come to a couple years, a little less than $1 million, penciling him in for a nice little $925K deal. I certainly think he's someone that at a minimum would go on your fourth line, if not bump Kuznetsov down. But it's going to be some combination of these guys.
Yeah.
But we also don't have Merkulov signed. I just don't know if he's going to crack the lineup.
Who?
Georgi Merkulov. I think they know what he is at this point, and if he wants to keep playing in Providence, they'll let him. But who's he bumping out at this point?
And if they bring in a top scorer,
Where does he go?
Lysell has to go down to that third line because or either that Saka does, you know what I mean? It depends on who they sign, or Patra. Who's to say, you know what I mean? It depends on that's the whole thing. Like until you know what the offseason 100% looks like, until we hit the draft and we hit the free agency, you have no idea. This is just a crapshoot.
Yeah,
Because Lysell didn't light the world on fire, as Mougenel likes to say. He didn't light the world on fire in those 12 games that he played for Boston down the stretch. He played better. He definitely showed that he could handle himself, but he wasn't lighting the world on fire. Bye, Kevin.
Oh, bye, Kevin. Absolutely. We are going to be doing these a lot more because Gayle is now with us instead of Dom. But Dom hopefully will be back. So we'll see you soon, Kevin. I will also say I know a name that's been floated out there, and I don't think it's unreasonable to think of. I believe it's Brock Besser because he's connected with Casey Middlestead. They are very good friends. I believe it's Besser because I know it was. They played together in Vancouver. They've trained together. There's some connection out there, and if that's the case, I mean your second line could be Zacha, Middlestead, Brock Besser. And I'm okay with that. Let's see. Kenny.
I'm not sure Middlestead is the center to drive that type of line, though.
Kenny said Dom told us yesterday that Merkulov wants to try to make it work in the NHL. There are no plans to sign in the KHL. Now will it be in Boston? Who knows? That's a good point. And certainly very credible coming from Dom. So I haven't talked to him in a couple of days. I know he's got a lot going on. So we touch base here and there. But if he's saying the updated is that Merkulov wants to try to make it work in the NHL, then I'll take Dom at his word for that. I look at this and I go, in this lineup, who is he 100% better than?
Merkulov?
Yeah.
Oh, he's better than Lauko and Beecher.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Are you putting Merkulov on the fourth line?
I'm not putting him on the fourth line. That's exactly the whole thing. So that's the whole thing. And that has been the problem with Lysell his entire career. You're not putting him on the third or fourth line. He needs to be a top six forward. To give him an actual chance, he needs to be on a top six forward.
And Merkulov only plays the middle or the left. He doesn't play the right. He never has. Lysell has played a little bit of the left. I don't trust him over there as much. He's struggled enough to make the team as a right wing.
And by the way, Middlestead and Bozer never played together.
So it wasn't Besser. There was someone else over there. No, they played in. No, it wasn't Vancouver. No, who's the one in Colorado?
Oh yeah, because
Brock Nelson.
Okay, because I'm like he's only played in Vancouver.
It was Brock
And Casey
Nelson.
Middlestat never played in Vancouver. He played in Buffalo and Colorado.
Either way, I would take Middlestat and Nelson as much as I would take Middlestat and Besser. So, but yeah, that would, and actually Besser would be able to, or Nelson would be able to play down the middle with Middlestat on the left, which I know you like Middlestat better on the left.
I just think that if Zaka is not with Pasternak, he is more of a scorer than a playmaker. If he's with Pasternak, he looks to be a passer. So I would rather see Zaka on a wing than in the center.
I think
If
he
he's
plays wing better overall. I think his ceiling as a left wing is higher than his ceiling as a center. He looks better as a center because when he's at center, usually it's with Pasternak on his wing, and Pasternak makes everybody look good. That doesn't mean Zaka's playing to his best.
right. Well,
So,
Kenny, we gotta address the Kenny comment.
let's see. Very disheartening as a fan to hear Lysell talk about how he will do everything to make the lineup out of camp next season, then have the playoff he had in Providence.
But that I can't. You know what though? The problem that I have with that is that so Providence didn't have a great playoff.
Right. Not many people on the team did. DiPietro had a good playoff. Bussy, when he came in relief, had a good playoff. But when you get 8 shots on goal, unless Lysell had 4 of them, he didn't have a good playoff. No one did.
Right. But it's not even just him. It's not like do we know why? It's just the whole team didn't play as well as they did in the regular season. It's almost like the Bruins, their historic year. And I'm not saying Providence had a historic year, but you look back to that Bruins team 2 years ago that outperformed in the regular season and then shit the bed in the playoffs. That's basically what Providence did. They
Yeah.
played a lot better in the regular season. And, a lot of it could be, I mean, you don't know what the reason is. But in the playoffs, let's see. Mikulov, who is who had a pretty decent regular season, right?
Merkulov, yeah, he had a decent regular season.
Where the hell is he in the postseason?
Merkulov was hurt in the postseason.
That's right. He didn't even play in the postseason. That's right.
Yeah.
All right, hold on. All right.
Let's see.
Patra.
Patra had a great playoff overall. Like he was one of the better players in the playoffs, which isn't saying a lot.
Two goals, 2 assists with a -5 in 8 games.
Problem is the -5, but he certainly wasn't the reason for all 5 of those going in, but it doesn't help.
Ironically, Oliver Wahlstrom had, a decent postseason.
Hey, he has found his shot with Providence. Ever since he got through to Providence, he has been able to find the net.
How many times have I said that there are players that just have better careers in the AHL than they do in the NHL? And I'm not saying that's Lysell. I'm not saying, when I said that, people are like, oh my God, I'm not talking about Lysell. But in reality, you look at Chris Bourque is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Keith Aucoin is another. There's so many players that just play better at that level than at the NHL level. And it doesn't mean that they're bad hockey players. It just means there's better players.
I know another one, Patrick Brown.
Right.
People, I love the fact that people got so upset about him re-signing with the team.
Yeah, I was really kind of upset that Morgan Geekie thought that Mick was being serious about that tweet too.
Yeah, I would say Morgan Geekie spent a little more time on Twitter. a little more time on Twitter, and you know that that's a joke.
Well, and I'm surprised that obviously he doesn't know everyone's names, but Mick's been covering the Bruins for I don't know how many years. Mick's always out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not, he's not, and he's not, I'm not going to say who but anyways, he's not one of those.
He's not Nazem Kadri taking a shot at his own team.
Crap all over. Right. Basically.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to put, I'm sure the two of them will be able to connect at some point and be like, oh, my bad, and kind of move on.
Well, I'm sure, like I said, I don't even think he realizes who Mick
Right.
is. And I don't think Mick would call him out for it.
No. It would probably be a little post scrum like, hey, what you didn't know it was a joke? Oh, my bad. I didn't realize it was you. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. We all moved past it. Like, but I thought it was hilarious though that Nazem Kadri called out Colorado for trading Mikko Rantanen. That was great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, how would you feel about a Brock Nelson, Casey Middlestead, Fabian Lysell line?
I guess we won't know until we see it. I don't know how Lysell plays with them. He's the X factor. He's the X factor because you don't know how well he's going to play a full season up in the NHL if he makes the roster out of camp. It also depends on who the coach is. Because the coach that comes in can change the system and Lysell could thrive. And he could end up on the line with Pasternak as opposed to Geeky being up there. So I mean, that's where it starts, is who the coach is. Do they stay with their system? Do they tweak the system? Factors out there that we don't know yet. It's like so hard to, which is a good segue into the coach part.
Yeah, which we barely touched on last week, like at all.
Right.
I mean, obviously, we'll continue to talk about the lineup and stuff, but do you have any sense? Actually, real quick, Tyler says Poitras took a couple dumb penalties at key times too. He also got his bell rung. He got right up after, but that interference was a bad hit. Like the officiating in the AHL was just as bad as in the NHL has been. So I'm not really putting too much on a couple penalties that aren't his game.
And the other thing is too, is a young player like that is gonna make mistakes and take dumb penalties. You know what I mean? Because he's going to try and overcompensate for certain things. We saw it with Mason Lohrei this year. He would make a mistake, so he would double down and make an even bigger mistake. You see that with younger players. You even see it with some of the older players. When they make mistakes, they try and double down. Sorry, I got sidetracked by Kenny's comment.
I was just going to pull that up. Yeah. He said Providence didn't have a great playoffs, but key players like Lettieri, Poitras, Wahlstrom, and Minton did. I expected better out of him. I think he's talking about Minton there. But
no, I think he's talking about Lysell again. Because we talked about, he said it was disheartening for Lysell to have the playoff that he had. So I think he's talking about Lysell. Kenny, am I right? You talking about Lysell?
I would agree with you. Yeah, good point. I don't know. I think it was fairly close to when the other comment was written, and we were talking about that. So probably more accurate there. But
you know what? But you could also say that last year in the playoffs, in the for the Bruins, that you expected more out of certain players on their roster in the playoffs. Yeah, so he did clarify that it is Lysell. But I mean, you had players that didn't play well in the regular season that stepped it up in the postseason. You had players that played well in the regular season and became invisible in the postseason. I think, maybe he lost his chemistry with the team down in Providence. That's possible. That he felt that he lost that chemistry. Maybe he lost some confidence You never know. Unfortunately, seeing a player like that, you want to see him always play his best, but you never know. Like it's just, yeah. I want to see Lysell succeed. I really want to see him in a Bruins lineup,
Yeah.
but not at the expense of the team. Like that's why, and someone was laughing at when I said this on with Ian on low quality. No one expected the Bruins to be as bad as the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's why Lysell didn't play a full season in Boston.
Right.
Had they known coming into the season they were gonna be as bad as Chicago or San Jose, you know what I mean? You probably would have seen Lysell play a lot more games.
Right. Well,
But
I
they
mean,
were
it's the same thing. You think Nashville would have gone out and signed Steven Stamkos if they knew he was going to struggle the way he did? No,
right,
no one would have
right,
signed him at that. Like,
right.
you know, coulda, woulda, shouldas. That's not how the game is played. It's you can only go with
But
what you have. So
no, Kenny, I don't think it's an unfair expectation for to expect more out of Lysell, especially after finishing the season in Boston. But in the same sense, at what point do we I mean, are you saying when you had different expectations, do you think that the team chemistry was not there? See, that's part of it. Um, but like, are you saying you want to cut ties with Lysell?
I don't
Or
think
are you saying
I don't
like
think that's
if
where
you
Kenny's going with it.
but he's saying it's disheartening as a fan to hear Lysell talk about how he would do everything to make the lineup out of camp. Okay. But then he had the playoff that he had. So, but how many more years should he be in Providence versus getting his shot in the NHL?
Yeah,
You know what I
and he
mean?
also adds on
Like,
that I think it was the case with everyone. The team chemistry was just not there. Guys were
right,
legitimately just missing drop passes on the power play. They scored a
right.
ton of shorthanded goals because of it, or Charlotte did rather. So like there was definitely some issues there, and I know there was some we'll call it coaching inconsistencies down in Providence for the
Well,
last
because
month or
Mougenel
so.
was gone for a while.
Right.
Mougenel was gone. So you had Adam
So
McQuaid on the bench, and then Mougenel comes back, and he messed with the lines. Things happen.
it wasn't even just Adam McQuaid. You also had Trent Winfield for a day. Like you had coach of the day, basically. So of course things were going to go all snafu because you didn't have your head coach there. So
Right,
I think what you saw in Providence shows just how important getting that head coaching position can really be. And I know we were
right.
going to dive into that a little bit. My question to you was going to be: is there someone do you have a favorite that you think will actually get the job? And do you have a favorite for who you want to get the job?
I have a sinking feeling that Rick Tocchet will end up getting the job.
You think they pour out the cash for Rick Tocchet?
I'm not sure that cash is accurate. First of all,
I haven't seen
let's
any
just
numbers. I just know Tocchett's asking for a lot, and the Bruins tend to script out on paying coaches. So
well, right. I don't think that I'm not sure that right now. And I mean, what has he done to demand that kind of money?
oh, I agree. I don't see, but someone will give it to him. I just
So
don't
let
think it'll be.
Philadelphia give it to him.
That's what I'm saying. Let Philly give it to him. Someone wants to
Let
pay
Philly
him
give it
as
to him.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
let Philly give it to him. Um, I my if on the list of people that are circulating, um,
I know Ty
the
Anderson's
assistant in
pushing Misha
Dallas.
Donskoff.
Yes, the assistant in Dallas. Yes.
And I don't hate him as a candidate. I really don't. Especially as a first year head coaching candidate, I don't hate him because
Mhm.
what I know a lot of people have looked at Jay Leach, and I don't know if I see head coach in Jay Leach. I've also
No, because if
seen
they were going to do that, they would just keep Sacco. They're not going to promote Leach over Sacco.
Right. But I also see in Jay Leach, he's doing a little bit more when it comes to the scouting side of things, the player development side of things. Like he's dipping his foot into so many other areas that I feel like he's more of a, I don't want to say a coach, like more of a consulting role for the next coach. Like he
Well,
knows the players.
it depends on who the next coach is. If the
Well, and
next
that's why I
coach
think
has,
that
if they have
Dom.Hockey is
Boston
a candidate.
ties, if he has Boston ties, then you could see Leach stay on, maybe
Mhm.
as an associate coach, because I'm not sure Joe Sacco says, all right, then I'll stay.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm not sure that Joe Sacco says, okay, yeah, you don't want me to be the coach, so I'm going to stay on as the associate coach. Not sure that happens. Not to
I don't think
mention,
so.
not to mention, they may do a clear, we're getting rid of everyone. You could see, except for goalie Bob, he is the only one that I think his job is 100% safe. Goalie Bob, that's it on that coaching
And
staff.
I will say this, and even after the year the goaltenders had, that might only be about 98% at this point.
I disagree with you 100%. I will die on that sword. Goalie Bob is not going anywhere.
I don't think he should go anywhere. Let me be clear on that.
It's not his fault that Swayman had the season that he had. It is not his fault.
No,
Absolutely not.
and I know
Nope.
we've heard how much the consultation is when it comes to who starts and all that stuff, but I think all that went out the window this year because you didn't know when you were going to have Swayman available based on the contract dispute and all that stuff.
But I don't think he was as involved this year because they honestly thought that Swayman was going to be their number one. Regardless of when he signed his contract, it wasn't 1A, 1B like it was with Allmark and Swayman when they would lean on a Cessna for who's going to start this, who's going to start that. This year, it was pretty much Sacco's decision. I don't think he leaned on goalie Bob as much as Monty did in the past 2 seasons, because if you look at the goaltending the past 2 seasons versus this year, it's a 360, complete 360.
No, I think he 100% should be safe. I would definitely keep him around. I don't
see any head coach coming in saying I don't want goalie Bob. Not one. I think any head coach would die for him.
What about Patrick Waugh?
Isn't he still in New York?
He is, but they're waiting on their new GM. Would you want Patrick Waugh if he becomes available?
No. I loved him as a goaltender, but I don't like him as a head coach.
I think he's a good head coach, just not for this team. I compiled a list of some of the head coaching candidates out there, and kind of put some of my thoughts out there and whatnot. We'll just run through that list real quick. You can just give me a quick yes or no. If there's more to it, then feel free. But Dan Bylsma, how would you feel about him? The positive that I see in Dan Bylsma is he's totally outside, like complete fresh perspective.
Yeah, but no, but not really, because he's still recycled.
But he's been with Detroit, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and New York, the Islanders. So like he is a recycled coach, but he's an outside perspective to Boston.
Yeah.
It doesn't thrill me. That's the thing, is there's nothing that says that he would be a great candidate, just a good candidate.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously, David Carlisle isn't going anywhere. Greg Cronin.
No.
I wouldn't want him either. I think he would be more interested in the job than the job should be interested in him.
Correct.
Jay Leach, we talked about. I think he's more. He fits more of that. If you go with a Donskov kind of guy, you have Leach, you have Sacco there to kind of, back him up, if you will. That's what I see Leach as. I don't see him taking over as the head coach. Pandolfo, he's staying in BU. Jay Woodcroft's name's been thrown out there. How would you feel about Woodcroft?
I would mind him more than Balsma. Like, I would take him first, and I would take him off over Cronin.
He has
But
to
he's
answer
still not
one major. He has to answer one major question for me, and that
What's that?
is, what the hell did you do to your defensive scheme your last year in Edmonton?
Okay.
Because as soon as he changed it, he refused to go back, and the whole thing just went to shit. Why did you change it, and why didn't you change it back when you saw that it wasn't working? Until he can answer those questions, I don't know if he coaches again. Because you have to be able to look at that and say, I messed up. Let me switch it back to the other system. It worked. So I think a name that might be underrated in the head coaching search. How would you feel about Jeff Blashill, the former Detroit head coach? Because he's been
I'd
on
rather
the Tampa
see.
staff since he got let go from Detroit. He's an assistant with John Cooper right now.
I mean, it's worth looking at him, but there's still. I would still put Misha above him.
Okay, fair enough. Let's see. One of the other coaches that I found was he's been an assistant with Carolina for 12 years, but Jeff Daniels.
So Carolina is one of those teams where that proven track record, Rod Brindamore. So I would put him above. Yeah, I would.
And he's been
still,
there for 12 years. So if he wants to make the jump
Yeah.
to be a head coach, now would not be a bad time to do it.
Right. Yeah.
I won't even mention Joel Quenneville. One, he's signed, and
How I feel
two,
about that.
and two, neither one of us want to see him anywhere near his Spoke B. So,
Right.
how would you feel if they just said, Joe Sacco, the job's yours?
I wouldn't be happy. I like Joe Sacco. Don't get me wrong. I like Joe Sacco. I don't think while this team is in transition that he's the right person for the job.
I know he's got a lot of support from the locker, from within, basically, is I believe how I think Ty has described it on numerous occasions. He's got a lot of support from within. If that's the case, which Ty's usually pretty good about that. My other question with Sacco, right? Go ahead.
Nothing. Never mind. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say Claude Julien had a lot of support from within.
Sure. Oh no, absolutely. And so
you
did
know
Bruce
what?
Cassidy until he didn't.
The only coach that didn't really have it was Bruce Cassidy.
And even then, he had it from some players, but not others. So here's the thing with Sacco. I know everybody keeps saying how this GM and president, Neely and Sweeney, have one more coaching hire in them. And I go, the possible exception to that could be Joe Sacco. And here's why. Because it's a transition year, we all know that it's the transition year. If they give the job to Sacco, let's say he's got a 2-year contract, right? Nothing major, just a 2-year contract. And Don Sweeney does his job and gets them players, and they get back to the first round, and then they have a first-round exit. Do you then not have another excuse to say Sacco isn't the guy to get us to the next step, which is Stanley Cup contender, and then you can fire him and bring in someone else?
But why would you even take that chance?
Because you know what to expect from Sacco.
You don't, but you really don't, because you don't know what the roster is yet. And you didn't have Swayman at 100%. And you didn't have your defense. So you really don't know what you have in Sacco.
Who's more of a wild card coming into this team, Joe Sacco or Rick Tocchet?
Rick Tocchet.
Exactly.
But I would take Tocchet, but I would take him over Sacco.
Oh, I agree. I think he's a much better coach. I'm just saying everybody is
so
so quick to say.
why put someone in there? Why put someone in there just to put someone in there? You want the right coach, regardless of whether or not you think that maybe you'll get another year. Sweeney's contract is up at the end of this year, anyways, and they have not decided if they're extending him.
Dom visiting from the chat says should only be
Hi,
one name on
Dom.
the list. Misha Donskov. Oh, and Henry Joker may be close to signing an extension. Okay.
Misha's my number one choice too.
He's my number one guy. He's the one I hope they go for. I'm just trying to think of
I
how.
honestly would like to see a clean slate. And I'm going to go back and answer Kenny's question. If they clear house, do they clear the AHL staff as well? Providence playoff record since Mougenel stepped into the head coach's role hasn't been good. Okay. I have no problems clearing house. I have 100% no problems with them clearing house from top to bottom when it comes to coaching staff.
Except for Dunham and Essenza.
Correct. Well, I already said that Assassin is not going anywhere.
I would
Bob
just
is not going anywhere.
I would just lose Mike
I don't
Dunham
care
in there.
who the head coach is. Goalie Bob is not going anywhere.
Yeah, and that's the other reason why Misha seems to be a good choice, because he's not going to rock too much coming in right away. He might say like, I want to bring this guy with me, but getting some love for the clear house idea. I'm not against it. Again, as we always say, and as Dom and I have talked about,
as much as I like Chris Kelly, it's okay if he goes.
Right.
And another name that's been floated around too is Marco Sturm.
Marco Sturm's been thrown around. Dom with some inside information here. He says that he texted Misha last week, would not confirm or deny whether or not there's been a conversation. So
no, Sweeney has confirmed that there is people in the playoffs, but he won't confirm who, and Sweeney never will. That's Sweeney.
No, he won't. But I hope it's Misha. I don't know if that's what he's going by these days, but I would hope Dom just throwing in Dom bombs from the chat. I love it. Dom, we miss you. Hopefully we can see you soon. Hopefully the family is well. Hopefully you're well. Thank you for coming into the chat. I hope it's Misha, but I'm just trying to think of the most Bruins way to Bruins this thing up.
Well, Marco Sturm's been doing a really good job in Ontario with the rain.
People need to start getting the fantasy of Mark Savard out of their head, because that's not happening. And yeah, I mean, I don't see. I think they've targeted Misha as their guy. I really do. But then Tocchet came along, and they're like, well, we could talk to him too.
You can talk all you want. It's just a matter of who's going to work.
Torts would not be the one to Bruin it up.
Yeah.
No, Bruins meet. No. That would be way far off from Bruinsing it up. Bruinsing it would be Joe Sacco, to be completely honest with you. To pull a Bruins here would be to hire the guy you already have, go through all the smoke and mirrors, and just go, it's Sacco. That would be the most Bruin thing to do. Not Tortorella.
And Torts is not going to.
Good night to your grandson, Dom.
Bye, Dom. Torts, after leaving Philly the way he left Philly, is not coming to Boston.
The rosters are at too similar of a point. They really just are. I mean, regardless of who you go out and sign and whatnot. I know last episode we talked a little bit about some of the options that you have with the draft. You could pull a trade.
Right. Because the thing is too is that, all right, if they're healthy, right? If they're healthy, I guarantee you Jeremy Swayman is going to have a bounce back year.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? I've talked about that ad nauseum. He's going to have a bounce back year. We're going to see the way he was 2 years ago.
Yep.
Not this past season, the season before. Then you're going to have a healthy McAvoy, a healthy Lindholm, a Beta Zadorov. If Yokiharu signs his extension, I'm all on board with that. You've got Peak. You got Mason Loring. So the one thing that they have to replace on the back end is Brandon Carlo. They have to replace him. They absolutely 100% have to replace him. Some way, somehow, they have to replace
absolutely.
him.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, but you see, the thing that they lacked all year long, outside of the injuries, because the defense was horrible with the injuries, and the goaltending was horrible with the sitting out and this and that and the other thing. But the thing that they lacked the most that we talked about the last time is secondary scoring. They have Pasta, they have Geeky. Where's the rest of the scoring? Okay. So they have to find that scoring. If you have that goaltending and that defense that you had over the last 3 years, and you find that scoring, this team is going to be in the playoffs.
And you don't have to find Brandon Carlo. You just have to find a defenseman who can do what Brandon Carlo did to some degree.
But Brandon Carlo is one of the most elite penalty killers in the league.
Now,
okay,
do you think that Andrew Peak can fill the role good enough?
If he starts maybe from the very beginning playing that role, because it was at the trade deadline that you know what I mean? So maybe in his exit interview, they said to him, next year, we're going to rely on you as a top PK killer. We need you. That's one of the things we need you to work on in the off season is, spreading the ice 5-on-4. You know what I mean? So possibly. And it's not to say that Yokiharu can't fill that void either. You know what I mean? So it's not, but they still have to find someone. And as much as I like Parker Wotherspoon, they have to find someone better than Parker Wotherspoon to fill that other role. Because if you're going to keep Lowry in your rotation of your top 6D, then Parker Wotherspoon's still looking on the outside in. The only reason why he got as much playing time down the stretch is because they traded away Brandon Carlo.
I'm trying to find.
And Charlie McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm were injured. Now, again, we talked about this last week. When you look at the defense, you have Charlie McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm, Nikita. Then you have Yokiharu, Andrew Peak, Mason Loring. Mason Loring is an RFA. You can get, because he had a suspect year, he definitely did not have the year he played the year before. And part of that is the injuries in front of him. He had a lot more eyes on him. He played in all different situations. So will he have a bounce back year having those 2 extra voices of true leadership on the ice? Probably.
Yeah.
But so then you have Parker Wotherspoon, who's on the outside looking in. And Parker is a UFA versus an RFA. So you got it, but you still have to bring in another
Parker Wotherspoon, I think, is
and
gone.
I'm not sold on Cal. Now, if you can keep Wotherspoon for low numbers and he knows he's going to be that rotation like he was, I have no problems keeping him. He's not a liability. He's not a liability. But again, I would rather see them find another defenseman that can fill that role that Brandon Carlo left.
And a name I keep going back to, because we know how Don Sweeney likes to go and get his white whales, the ones that he missed. The guy, once he gets his eyes set on someone, eventually he wants to get that person. He'll be patient, but he'll sign him. On that right side, I look at Dante Fabro, and I think you could have a right side that would go McAvoy, Fabro, and Peak. Your left side, again, barring a trade, you could go Lindholm, Lohrei, and Zadorov in some capacity. Honestly, you could mix and match them until the chemistry is right. I don't care how the partners look as long as it looks good, as long as they play well together. And then I actually think there's a kid in Anaheim. Anaheim is getting flooded in their blue line right now with young talent, but there's a 23-year-old kid, Ian Moore. He can play both left and right side. He is under contract for next year and then becomes an RFA because he's only 23 years old. He's someone that I could see the Bruins make a trade for, Ian Moore. Because he can play both sides. He's a right shot, so he would be that perfect Parker Wotherspoon replacement in a position where behind those 6 guys, he could absolutely thrive.
Mm-hmm.
What if they're going
the other
for a
question
more
is
mobile defensive core? Yeah.
He's healthy, is mobile. Lohrei is definitely mobile, but you're not going to have every pair have, you know what I mean? But the other thing is if Lohrei doesn't have that bounce back year with those healthy defensemen in front of him, you know, with McAvoy and Lindholm back, if Lohrei doesn't have that, you have to have someone strong to come in and fill that. And that's another part.
Yeah.
It's another part of filling Brandon Carlo.
And yeah, I mean, right now you look at the left side of that defense.
But who are you talking about, Bruins meet? And, you know, I think you used one of your guys for a Wotherspoon replacement. Are you talking about Callahan? Are you talking about the guys in Providence? Because if that's the case, they did that a little bit.
Right. I mean, I could see them carrying 8D and 13 forwards. It's just that's not what they typically do.
Right.
So, like, if you have the cheap enough defense, then fine. But right now, you don't have 8D that are worth carrying.
Right.
And I know a lot of people want to look down in Providence and see, you know, trust me, I'm as thrilled about some of the guys coming up in Providence as you can get. I love what Gallagher is offering. Do I think he has an opportunity to come in next year and push in camp? Absolutely. I think he'll make a very strong case to make the roster. That being said, unless he outplays 3 people, he's your top guy in Providence. And that's okay.
He's not outplaying McAvoy. He's not. See, this is the problem that people forget. He's not outplaying McAvoy. He's not outplaying Lindholm. He's not outplaying Zadorov. There's 3 people right there. He probably will not outplay Andrew Peeke. He's probably not going to outplay Yoki Haru if they get him signed. So the only 2 people that he can outplay right now is Mason Lohrei and Parker Wotherspoon.
Right. And really the only one that I can see him outplaying in that grouping is Wotherspoon.
Right. And if that's the case, you let Wotherspoon walk away anyways because he's a UFA. You know what I mean? But
the counter that I would have to that, though, is you can replace Parker Wotherspoon, and then you can send Gallagher down to be your Providence number 1 defenseman. It's the same case we would make for Matthew Poitras. He will be your number 1 guy, in which case he plays all the heavy minutes. You know he can handle the minutes. It's getting him the minutes in professional, not in the NCAA, at the professional level. That way it's a one-and-done Providence for him. Now, could that be his path? It very well could be. I hope it is. I'm rooting for that kid something fierce. Mm-hmm. But if he needs 2 years in Providence, it is what it is. I'm not going to cry over it. Because
no, but there are people out there that don't care. They just want them on the roster without. So, and I had this argument about Matthew Poitras not even Matthew Poitras. Why have him sit on the 9th floor in Boston when they could be playing minutes down in Providence?
A great example of that would be Frederic Bruin. There's no reason why, as good as he could be, there's no reason why he should be your 8th 7th or 8th defenseman in Boston because he is a puck-moving defenseman. That is what he excels at. Put him in Providence and let him move the puck.
And that was the thing about, and that was about Lowry the year before last year. Was everyone was like, why isn't he? Why would you want him if he's not going to play?
Mm-hmm.
Why, if he's going to just sit there and watch, you don't bring him up. I know that McAvoy and Lindholm were injured, but they have to aim much higher. The defense was brutal last year.
The defense was brutal because you had McAvoy, Lindholm injured, and you traded Brandon Carlo. Everyone was out of position. You had your number one penalty killer after you traded Brandon Carlo was Nikita Zadorov. You did not have Hampus Lindholm or Charlie McAvoy running either power play unit. And I know the first power play unit, not great with McAvoy on it, but at least he knew what he was doing compared to flopping out of water fish Mason Lohrei. Now, Mason Lohrei has a better projection to run that power play. And I think coming up this year, power play 1 absolutely run by Hampus Lindholm. Power play 2 should absolutely be Mason Lohrei. But there's a difference between playing a minute and a half and 30 seconds on that power play for Mason Lohrei. Big difference.
And there's another reason why that the problem is, though, is if McAvoy and Lindholm are both healthy, they're going to have those two running the power plays. Hampus Lindholm's going to have power play 1 and McAvoy will have power play 2 because that is the role that they've used. Now, do I agree with you that Lohrei should have power play 2? Absolutely. But Hampus Lindholm has to be power play 1.
Absolutely. And Zadorov did look good, especially down the stretch. The problem is he should not be your number 1 penalty killing defenseman. He just shouldn't be. He should be on PK 2. I'm okay with him on PK 2. But remember what we used to have for penalty killing unit. Brad Marchand, Patrice Bergeron, and Brandon Carlo, and who was the other defenseman when it was at its peak? I mean, Hampus Lindholm for a while.
Right.
But I'm trying to remember who was before that. But I mean,
you could even say your second penalty kill, which is Charlie Coyle and Trent Frederick.
Yep.
Those two forwards were still, you know what I mean? So now that's the problem, is that they have to that's the whole thing, is that special teams used to be the Bruins were the echelon of specialty teams. Penalty kill, power play, everything. And they lost a lot. And their entire
first power play penalty kill unit is gone from the good old days when it was Chara, Carlo, Bergeron, Marchand. All four of them
you're going really far back with 5
years.
Chara.
5 years.
That's still going way far back.
You had you had Marchand this past year. 2 years ago, you had 3 of the 4. So my point being is you go back 3 years, you still had Carlo, Marchand, Bergeron. Now you have none of them.
Right.
You have, from what you used to have, you have no penalty kill.
Right.
And Zadorov, while great on the second unit, you still want to have Hampus Lindholm. Hampus Lindholm, Charlie McAvoy should be your number 1 power penalty kill unit. Those two should anchor that defense.
But the problem that you have with that, though, is once you come out of it, your defensive pairs are all screwed up if you have them on the top unit together. So that's where you have to split them up.
Oh, no, I agree. I'm just saying.
Except for certain. It's just like when you want to go back to 2011, Chara and Seidenberg didn't always play together. They played together in certain scenarios and certain opponents because you needed them to be 1A and 1 and 2A, because you needed that, which is why McAvoy and Lindholm should never be your I mean, when they paired together, they're good in certain games against certain opponents, but you need that depth. You need to keep them. So when you have your top D is Charlie McAvoy, your second one is Hampus Lindholm, your third one is Nikita Zadorov, and then you build around those three players.
Right. And I wouldn't mind seeing like Hampus Lindholm and Andrew Peak as your penalty killing duo.
Right. Yeah.
That's kind of where you're looking at. Now, again, you mentioned Michael Callahan, unrestricted free agent. So we really don't know if he's going to be back or not, but another defensive guy that could be, he's more of an eighth or ninth defenseman.
He could be your Paco Wotherspoon. He could be your one that's up in Boston that you don't care if he's not getting every game. You don't care if he's sitting up on the ninth floor versus a Frederick Brunet, a Galler. You know what I mean? Those are the kids that you don't want sitting on the ninth floor watching. You want them in the games.
Right. And Bruins Meat said that he was talking about Ty Gallagher specifically. I do like the typo here or the autocorrect. He says over military when he meant to put in Yoki Haru. I can just imagine the phone doing that autocorrect on him. So, phones, gotta love them. But
I liked him with Zadorov down the stretch, though. I liked Yoki Haru with Zadorov down the stretch. I think they built a lot of chemistry together. And I think if you start that, and again, you have Charlie, Hampus, and you have those two healthy, Zadorov's on your third defensive pairing, which means less minutes, which means a better Zadorov.
Right. And I do think someone who's going to come in possibly next year to Providence could be Loke Johansson. He could help Providence on the left side. Yeah, he said it was an autocorrect. I figured it was an autocorrect, especially as soon as I saw the next one. I just couldn't help but laugh about it. So we talked about it last week, or I think it was last episode, when we were talking about the draft. People have a fundamental misunderstanding of this team's drafting approach, in my opinion, because everybody is looking at, let's take 2019 as an example. They took John Beecher with their 30th overall pick, and immediately everybody jumped all over him. Oh, he's nothing but a bottom sixer. Okay, but you know what? He was available and ready within 2 years.
Right.
That's how they looked at him. He is a cheap bottom six option who will be in our system in 2 years. You know who's not in their system 2 years later, but is a higher center ceiling? Don Slotch-Mellis. Don Slotch-Mellis was drafted. Let's see, what year was he? I want to say he was 2022. So 2 years later, this would have been his first year. So just comparing those two, which by the way, Slotch-Mellis, 4th round draft pick. So he's ahead of schedule. They draft with the idea some players are going to be ahead of schedule, some players are going to be behind schedule, and some are going to hit exactly as we project them to be, while others hit nothing along the way. And I had someone who I made a comment to someone the other day on Twitter about, because they're worried about the 7th overall pick and what they should do with it, this and that. And, you don't draft the 7th overall pick with the same approach that you do the 30th overall pick. Right. You cannot draft the 30th overall pick with a high draft pick mentality. Because the 7th overall pick, he better be in your lineup within a 2-year period. Right. That's what you're looking for. So that's why they look at guys like Jake O'Brien, Caleb Denoyer, Michael Misa. That's why those guys go in the top 7. That's why Connor Bedard went first. Because once he got picked, he was going to the NHL. Right. Macklin Celebrini, same thing. These guys got drafted and went right in, and that's why they were taken first, because they were ready to help the worst team in the league right now. Right. You don't take that guy. He's not available, first and foremost. He's not available 30th overall. If you have 30 players who are NHL ready, something fucked up. And people want to bash on the 2019, 2020, 2021 draft, but those are the COVID drafts.
Just call it what it is, 2015.
No. I'm saying those drafts were the COVID drafts. So people want to point to Fabian Lysell and Wyatt Johnson and be like, well, they missed there. No, Dallas got lucky. Dallas got lucky on that one.
But again, I will point out who is Fabian Lysell pushing out of that lineup. He wasn't pushing out David Krejci. He wasn't pushing out Pasternak. He wasn't pushing out Brad Marchand. He wasn't pushing out Patrice Bergeron. You look at, so you know what I mean? Like this year, he could push someone out this past season. He could push someone out. They didn't have the elite players that they had when they drafted him.
I also want to point out, people who want to compare the Dallas draft, for instance, we'll use that 2021 as an example, right? Sure. Okay. They absolutely hit on Wyatt Johnson and Logan Stankoven in that draft. 100%. Mm-hmm. I am not arguing with you on that. They had 10 picks in that draft. They hit on a first rounder at 23rd overall, and they hit at a second rounder at 47th overall. They also had 48th overall, has yet to touch on NHL ice, along with the other 7 guys that they drafted. The Boston Bruins, on the other hand, Fabian Lysell only has 12 games in the NHL, but you know who else looks like they're going to hit the NHL within the next 2 years and actually play quality NHL time? Oscar Yelvik, Andre Gasso, and Tyler Gallagher.
Right.
So you're talking about a team that had 10 picks and might have hit on 2. You had 7 picks and you might hit on 4.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the NFL where you can go, well, I have 1 first-round pick, so I'm going to drop down to 2 second-rounders. Because by that logic, all of your picks will be 7th-round draft picks. You will own the 7th round. Congratulations. You will have all 7th-round picks. And you can't sign all of them because you don't have that many roster spots.
Right.
That's why teams don't do it. We talked about it last week when I said you have some players who they are help now players. You have players in your pipeline who are help future elite building blocks or just future building block players. We'll call them that. And then you have you have your tweeners, the replaceable guys that are good enough, but they're the ones that fill in for the holes that you create on your own or get created organically. And when I say created organically, I mean, a Brett Harrison doesn't hit the way you thought he did. You need a new left wing. You have a guy who's serviceable enough to replace him. That's a Jeffrey VL.
Right.
Is he going to be anything in the NHL? Probably not. But you know what? He's better than what Brett Harrison is offering you right now. And if you need to call him up, you can put him on your 4th line. You might get a little bit of offense from him, but you can plug and play.
Can we remind people that Mark Stewart was picked before Patrice Bergeron?
Oh, let's not, do all that. I mean, come on.
Just saying. Let's just throw it out there. Mark
Who was
Stewart
the first pick overall that year? That would have been, oh God, that was what, 2003? 3? I can, Marc-Andre Fleury.
Yeah.
Would you rather have had Nathan Horton and Patrice Bergeron for their career?
Is that a serious question?
Somewhat. Proving a point.
Oh, yeah.
Bergeron, right? Bergeron went in the 2nd round. Nathan Horton went 3rd overall.
Right.
You have a case against Eric Stahl, and you have a case against Marc-Andre Fleury, but pretty much anyone else in that draft, I mean, when it comes to just sorted by games played, would you rather
that's why I'm saying that people put, unless you have the 1st or 2nd or the top 3 within the top 5, we'll go top 5. It's a crapshoot.
So that 2003 draft, right? I just sorted by games played, just because that's an easy metric.
Right.
The top 12 players are all first rounders, except for 2 of them. Now, if we extend that out to the top 15, 3 second-round picks and 1 7th-round pick. The rest, which would be 11 of them, all first-round picks. You're talking Ryan Suter, Brett Burns, Corey Perry, Eric Stahl, 7th-round pick Joe Pavelski, Jeff Carter, Dustin Brown. Finally, you get to a second rounder in Patrice Bergeron.
Right.
So in that group, a 7th rounder, let's be honest, San Jose got lucky there. They got a good one, but they got lucky.
Right.
And you got Bergeron in the second rounder. Then you have Zach Parise, Ryan Getzlaf, Brett Seabrook, and Marc-Andre Fleury. All first-round picks. You don't get to someone outside the first or second round until you get all the way down to Kyle Brodziak, who is another 7th rounder, by the way. So I'm looking at this top 20. You have 2 7th rounders and then a couple, 1, 2, 3, 4 second rounders. Everybody else is a first-round pick.
Right.
If you're not picking in the first round, you're not getting one of the best players in the draft.
Right.
My mind is blown by that concept. I don't know about you. Yeah, and I like BG411.
I just literally had to throw it out there that they picked Mark Stewart over Patrice Bergeron.
I like BG411 right here. Imagine all the teams that skipped on David Pastrnak.
Right.
So when you're picking with that 30th overall pick, you're picking not best player available, who's the best player available to help my team the way I need my team helped.
Correct.
Because guess what? If John Beecher fills your 4th line role for the next 5 years, I hate to break it to you, but the pick was successful.
Right.
Now, winning the cup is the ultimate goal, but you've got to have that player to help you win.
Mm-hmm.
Kendall says the Bruins have 2 second-round picks. They are very important picks, as well as the 7th. Second-rounders produce lots of great players. Absolutely. Again, Quadra's one. Lohrei was one. I mean, this team has an incredible history of second-round picks. I mean, not Axel Anderson, but, you know, they also didn't have a second-rounder last year or the year before.
They also picked David Krejci in the second round.
Yep.
Just think, Chris Bourque got drafted ahead of David Krejci.
Oh, God. Don't remind people of the facts. Come on. So, again, when it comes to the 7th round pick, they're going to pick a player of the ilk of Jake O'Brien.
Kyle Soderberg.
Who was he picked before?
David Krejci.
God. Wow. Oh. But you know who has that who kind of has a similar type of potential if he stays at center? Dan Zlotch-Mellis. Think about all the players that were picked above him.
Who would you have rather had in their career? Blake Wheeler or David Krejci?
Oh, Krejci. Blake Wheeler went what, like second or third?
Blake Wheeler.
Fifth.
And they got Krejci in the second round. I mean, granted, that class was Ovechkin first, Malkin second.
Hell of a class.
Okay. Hell of a class. Cam Barker went third.
And yes, I'll put it this way. As of right now, today, I absolutely would much rather have Macklin Celebrini over Dean Letourneau. You'd be crazy to say otherwise. Right now, 100%.
Well, yeah, but they also didn't have the first overall.
Right, but that's my point. Kendall, Chris Bourque, oh my God. But Adam Urachek, another one. Right now, Adam Urachek probably looks like he's going to be a better player. He went 16th to your 25th overall. You had to make adjustments, and the fact that other people or other teams screw things up, the Hudson brothers, can we point them out? Can we please point them out? After Lane Hudson dropped and then still went on to be Lane Hudson, Washington got Cole Hudson 43rd overall.
Right.
It still took 43 picks for someone to go, gee, I don't know, maybe the other Hudson brother might also be good.
Right.
It's I'm also looking to see where was Ilya Nabokov was the first goaltender taken, 38th overall. If goaltenders are such an important position, why aren't they drafted higher? Yeah, Bruins me. I love Dan Melis as well. I think he's going to be fantastic. I think he's going to push for a spot. But again, what comes back to is, as Gayle pointed out last week, management has said they don't want this to be a multi-year turnaround. If any part of you thinks Don Melis might not be ready to be a consistent 82-game NHLer, you got to send him to Providence. You have to be okay with that.
Right.
Now, him, Liesel, I'm trying to think of some of the other guys. Like, those guys aren't going to require waivers next year. So that's the advantage where you go, oh, okay, well, hey, we have an injury to Mitch Marner, who's our second line right winger after free agency. We need someone to fill in for him. Let's call up Fabian Liesel. Let's see what he can do. And then you will hope to high hell.
Will you stop talking about Mitch Marner?
I'm just using him as the example. All right. But that's when you hope that Fabian Liesel makes your decision of who to send down so hard where you sit there and go, do we try Mitch on the left now? Like, those are the hard decisions that you want to have.
Right.
Like, no matter what you do, you're going to have tough decisions. That's why, a lot of people want to crap all over Sweeney for, signing Tyler Johnson last year or claiming Oliver Wahlstrom, which I don't think we've talked enough about how he developed or figured out how to shoot the puck in Providence last year.
He's a Chris Bork. He's an AHLer. He is not an NHL player. I'm sorry. You can argue with me, but he is not an NHL player. He can thrive down in the AHL. He can thrive there just like Chris Bork did. Because I would take Chris Bork in the AHL any day of the week over Chris Bork.
You know how
in the
I
NHL.
view Oliver Wahlstrom right now? He is he's a younger version of Patrick Brown.
Yeah. And again, Patrick Brown is one of those two-way, you can bring him up, you can bring him down. He's a good to fill role, but he's not a full-time NHL.
Right. Now, and that's where I go, okay, so Patrick Brown. Patrick Brown is the guy that you call up and say, hey, Tufty got sick last night. We don't know if he's going to be able to play. We need you on a plane in 2 hours because we play Colorado tomorrow and we need someone here now. So pack a bag, get on a plane, and get your shit and get here. That's what you have Patrick Brown for.
I like Patrick Brown, but I don't want him on my NHL roster.
No, but that's what I'm saying is he's the guy that you call up for that because that's not a position you want to put Don Melis in. No matter how much I love the guy, and I think he's going to have a great year, I don't want Melis doing that cross-country, lose 3 hours of sleep trip because I don't know that I can put him in the lineup and get the same Don Melis that I think I'm going to get. Patrick Brown's game is so basic that you just go play on the fourth line, go out and do your thing, and you're going to get Patrick Brown. You're not going to get David Pastrnak one night and John Beecher another night and Fabian Liesel another night. You're going to get Patrick Brown every time he's in the lineup. You're not going to get great. You're going to get, I didn't screw it up. And sometimes you just need the guy who's not going to screw it up.
I agree.
And that's why you could move on from a guy like Mark McLaughlin. Because he was another guy who was he's not going to screw it up for you. But at the same time, if you have a top 9 injury, Mark McLaughlin isn't the guy you're calling up. And now at a certain point, he's taking away minutes from a Fabian Liesel or from, I would say in this case, a Dalton Bancroft. If you have Mark McLaughlin in your lineup next year, someone else is sitting, and that very well could be Dalton Bancroft. All right.
You know who else the Bruins drafted in the 7th round?
I'm
going back some years. I was going
to say Jake Schmaltz. He looks pretty good. He looks pretty good, rather.
No, PJ Axelson.
Oh, okay.
PJ Axelson was drafted in the 7th round.
And don't get me wrong. Every once in a while, you're going to get your Maxim Chudinov, 2010. Never played. But you're also, guess what? There's going to be first overall picks. Do we need to remind you of how many first overall picks Edmonton have? Nail Yakupov come to mind, anyone?
Right.
You know, you think they wish they could do that one over again?
So the Bruins had how many actual first overall picks? The last one I remember is 1997,
Joe
right?
Thornton, yeah.
Joe
I would
Thornton.
go so far as when did they have
And
top
then
5
they had
picks?
all right. So if you go back to yeah, PJ was the 7th. I promise you he was the 7th. Um, let's see. Nick Boynton was he was 21. Lars Johnson was 7th overall pick. Toivonen was 29th. Mark Stewart was 21st, picked over Patrice Bergeron. That still blows my mind. Matt Lashoff was 22nd overall. Phil Kessel was 5th overall in 2006.
Yep. So top 5 pick. I'd say that's a hit.
Tyler Seguin obviously was behind Taylor
Yep.
Hall
Taylor
that
Tyler.
year.
And let's be honest, you didn't have the choice. You were not the one who picked right or wrong. You were going to get the one that
Oh,
that
no. And if we had the Tyler Seguin that's in Dallas now and not the drunk idiot that we had in 2013, things could be different.
yep. Bruins mate says Saka was 6th
He
overall.
definitely grew. But that was but we didn't draft him.
No, but yeah.
Dougie Hamilton was 9th overall. Pasternak was 25th overall. So he's not a McAvoy was 14th. I mean, they didn't have a lot of first round
Okay.
picks.
So Bruins meat
know?
says I get the Patrick Brown's purpose and that he's needed, but I disagree that he should be eating up top line minutes when guys like Patra or your top prospect should be. So Bruins meat. My question is top 10 minute or top line minutes in Providence or top line minutes in Boston, because Patrick Brown's never getting top line minutes in Boston. So I'm going to assume you mean top line minutes in Providence, and here's why he's the guy that should be on your top line in Providence. He's the guy that Matthew Patra needs to beat out for a job. So you dangle that and say, Patrick Brown is our best center in the AHL. You have to beat him if you want to get to the National Hockey League. That's why, because that's what they are aiming for. They have to know what they're up against. And in the AHL, it's a lot easier to just, play guys, Matthew Patra, or because Matthew Patra is their top line center right now. It's depth chart wise, he's the second line center, but he's playing top line minutes. He's the one who's on the penalty kill. He's the one on the power play. He's getting PK time in Providence. Not as much as you would like if you want him to be that guy, but he's getting penalty kill time. So he's learning that, which he would not be getting in Boston by any stretch. And he's leading the power play.
No, Patra if Patra plays the minutes that he's playing in Providence, he's going to be a David Krejci in Boston when he's ready.
100%.
He's going to be that solid center that can play on the PK, he can play on the power play, he can be reliable. He's going to be David Krejci. He's never going to be Patrice Bergeron because no one's ever going to be Patrice Bergeron. But I could see him becoming a David Krejci to where he plays an all 200-foot game. It's not an issue with that. You know what I mean? But yes, you're 100% correct. He needs those minutes down in Providence to earn them up in Boston because he's not pushing anyone out right now.
And then Bob says, I don't have a problem with the Bees drafting history in the second round. They whiff in the first. That's the problem. So, Bob, let's dissect those first round picks as we were kind of in the middle of doing. Overall, they actually haven't been that bad. Now, I'm sure you're mostly trying to focus on the Sweeney Neely era, but when you focus on Don Sweeney's tenure, you also have to remember he started with the team in player development back in 2006. So he put together player development programs for Phil Kessel, for Zach Hamill, for Patrice Bergeron. He had just been drafted 2 years earlier. 3 years earlier. David Krejci 2 years earlier.
Well, but the thing is that okay, so let's look at some of their first round picks that didn't Zach Campbell.
Yep.
2007. Sweeney was not the
Correct.
GM. Zach Campbell. Okay. Joe Colborn. Jordan Caron.
Again, not the GM, Don Sweeney, but also Colburn
Right.
played almost
But that's a
300
first
games.
round. But that's a first round. Those are first round. Yeah, but those are first round picks. That if you look, all right. So
well, no, what I'm saying is what are we
let's
defining
see.
as an unsuccessful versus a successful pick? Because Colburn played almost 300 games. That's almost 4 seasons in the NHL. That's more than the average player. So if your obviously goals and points and stuff like that come into play to some point, but if you get a John Beecher who plays 800 games in his career, but he can't score worth a shit, but he's one of the best shutdown fourth line guys, is that a successful pick?
Okay, but so again, Kyle Palmieri was picked right after him.
Right after Colburn?
No, after
after Caron. Yes.
Caron.
So, but that's my question. Yes. Like Caron had 160 games played to Colburn's 295. So I would say Colburn's more of a success than Caron. But again, these are guys that Don Sweeney didn't pick. Bob, see, that's the thing is we're making your point, but not for Don Sweeney draft picks.
Right.
Anyway, so after that was 2010, right.
Well,
Tyler Seguin.
Right. And then, but then if you look at Dougie Hamilton obviously has had a successful career. He did not want to be in Boston. He hated the spotlight in Boston, didn't want to be here. That's part of it. Okay. And then Malcolm Subban, we know what happened with Malcolm Subban. He's just not.
Well, honestly, his career changed once the broken larynx. Everything changed for him at that point.
Right. Well, not only that, but in 2012, who is he pushing out in the Bruins organization?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay. And then the next time after Malcolm Subban that they had a first round draft pick was David Pastrnak. They definitely hit on that one. We all know they hit on that one. Okay. And then 2015, we're back to 2015. Everyone wants to talk about 2015.
Jake DeBrusk was a success.
Let's talk about 2015. He was 100% a success. And Zboril might have been a success had he not get injured. You don't know what his career would have been had he not been injured.
Same thing with Senyshyn.
Because
Senyshyn had knee. Each time Senyshyn got called up, he had the knee injury, he had an elbow injury. So very similar. Now, does that mean the pick was great? No. Everyone acknowledged even then Zach Senyshyn was a reach at 15th overall. They knew, I believe it was Anaheim, wanted to pick him, and he was not going to be around at their next pick, which was 37 overall. So they reached and they took him. Instead, at 37 overall, they walked away with Brandon Carlo. I've heard he's pretty good. So, their backup plan went pretty well. But Zboril went right where he should have.
Yeah. I really think that people would not have been upset with that draft had Jacob Zboril not gotten
100%.
hurt.
100%.
Because he probably would have been just as good as Brandon Carlo, if not better.
He was playing with Charlie McAvoy before he got hurt. You were legitimately looking at a Zboril-McAvoy pairing. That's why they lost Jeremy Lauzon in the expansion draft. And he's another one. If Jeremy Lauzon is still around, then which draft was he? He was another one.
He was 2015. He was the second
That's right.
rounder.
It was 2015. So, and he's already at 316 games played. Last time I checked, still pretty good. Systematic issues for decades. But Bob, what we're talking about here when it comes to the first round picks, we're back to 2010. You took Seguin, Hamilton, Malcolm Subban busted because of injury, David Pastrnak, Zboril busted because of injury, DeBrusk is a success, a slight stretch on Senyshyn, McAvoy and Frederick, both NHLers, Norris candidate in Charlie McAvoy. By the way, 14th overall, which was the Jake DeBrusk pick. Urho Vakanainen, almost 200 games played. He's a solid fixture in the New York lineup right now.
Hold that thought for a second. I got to run away for 1 second.
John Beecher. Right now, he is 5 years into his career, almost 6. He's got 130 games played. Does he score the way you'd like him to? No, admittedly. But you needed the type of game that he was bringing for you. Fabian Lysell, and then you haven't had a first-round pick since 2021. So you're talking about systematic issues that I'm just not seeing, Bob. What are those issues? Please describe them. Bruins Meat then adds in 2015, I think, is more scrutinized because of the players that came right after the Bruins pick. 100%. But Bruins, we can play that game for every single draft. And that's what we were looking at. I mean, when you think about who's gone when in drafts, that game can be played over and over and over again. And it's the dumbest game to play because guess what? If my aunt had wheels, she'd be a bike. Like, come on. Live in the world we're in. The decisions were made. Were they all the right ones? No. But you got 31 other teams out there screwing it up just as much as you do. Welcome back.
I had to say goodnight to my daughter.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
So I'm asking Bob, I don't know what those systematic issues are that he's referring to when it comes to the first round picks. This isn't a team that makes high first round picks. And I know, Dean Letourneau, he's the one that I missed. And guess what? Yeah, a little bit of a stretch, but when you're at pick 25, you're getting incomplete players. Secret's out. They're going to need some development. And you know what? They actually went off the board with what they would normally do. Normally, in that 25th spot, they would have picked a guy like John Beecher, who solid floor, unknown ceiling, would be ready in a couple years. Instead, they went for the possibility of a dynamic guy.
We still don't know what Letourneau's actually going to bring to the table because he actually went to BC quicker than he was supposed to.
But the fact that he even did that should be more promising because he was so good that Boston College said, oh, you haven't played in the USHL? That's okay. You can still join our program. I just don't believe they can evaluate accurately first-round talent. The problem is the numbers that we just went over don't back that up, Bob.
Right.
The facts are they just don't back that up. You can believe it all you want, but when you have a first-round pick, when you have a second-round pick, they hit for the most part. Again, second-round picks. Matthew Poitras, Mason Lohrei, Axel Anderson, a whiff. Jack Studnicka, not a great pick overall. But you know what? You flipped them for a couple good pieces if you hang on to them. Ryan Lindgren, NHL player. Brandon Carlo. Forsbacka Karlsson probably could have been something for you if you didn't have all those family issues that came up. Jeremy Lauzon, NHL player. Ryan Donato, took him a little bit longer, NHL player. So, overall, you're hitting on your first and second round picks.
Fourth round plugs in the first round? Did we not just... How is Charlie McAvoy...
How is David Pastrnak? I think he means a fourth line player like a John Beecher. I think that's where he's going with this.
But that's once.
And at the time, it was what you needed. And let's also remember when John Beecher was drafted, right? Do we not remember who was on his team at Michigan? See, Frederick's ceiling is higher. That's on the player for not reaching his ceiling. That's not entirely on the team. Let's see.
I'm looking at the 2019 draft, and I don't see anyone after Beecher that lights the world on fire.
Real quick, Bruins Meat also adds, my main thing was Sweeney, and I'm not a Sweeney hater. Ooh. But if you did not plan to rebuild when Krejci and Bergeron retired, why did you not have a plan with, say, the final 5 years? So the problem, first of all, it's a great question. when you sit here and say you needed to have a plan for when Krejci and Bergeron retired, okay, Bruins meet. Here's my question to you: what year should they have been planning for that? What year should they have started to plan for after Bergeron and Krejci? You give me the year.
Well,
And
yeah,
in this conversation, you're giving me the year with the benefit of knowing when they retired. So it's already not a fair fight, but I'll still come on that fight because the point is still the point. Beecher was a solid player, was on the U.S. World Junior team twice, I believe. Absolutely. But if you look at
well, literally, I'm looking at the 2019 draft, and he was drafted 30th overall in the first round. After him, Ryan Johnson, 44 games in the NHL. Shane Pinto, yes, he has more games, but he also plays for Ottawa. So let's talk about, who is John Beecher at the time. Shane Pinto could go in and break the lineup in Ottawa. John Beecher was not going to do that because of the team that was still playing. Bergeron was still playing. Krejci was still playing. We're talking 2019. You still had Chara. You still had, there's so many different people. So when you talk about that in 2019, John Beecher was the best person to build for the future.
Right. And I'm looking at some of the other players that, okay, well, we can throw these names out there. Second rounder, like you said, Shane Pinto, Bobby Brink. Okay, maybe he can play a little wing, but Jackson Lacombe, defenseman, Niels Höglander, left wing. Let's see, Drew Hellison, defenseman. Nicholas Robertson with Toronto, that's panning out fantastic. Brett Leeson, right wing. Let's see, who else have we got? I'm just looking at over 100 games played. Zach Jones, defenseman for New York. Pavel Dorofeyev might be an argument, but he's just now coming around. You've had Beecher in your lineup for 3 years, so I think you still win that. Alexei Protas, okay, you might have one in the third round.
But again, if he obviously wasn't ranked high enough.
Exactly.
He's picking him in the third round is like picking Bergeron after Mark Stewart.
I also want to sit here and point out that University of Michigan team, all right, let me just list off a few of these players, right? Matty Beniers. I'm pretty sure he was higher in the lineup than John Beecher. Kent Johnson, higher in the lineup. You also had Owen Power on that lineup. I know he's defense, but Mackie Samoskevich, the kid in Florida, he was on that team. You picked John Beecher. Like, he was not even the best forward on his own team.
Right.
So, again, was it the greatest move? With hindsight, no, it wasn't. I would much rather have Alexei Protas. But guess what? How many teams would like to have Henrik Lundqvist?
Well, and Beniers didn't even. It's not like Beniers was in the same draft class.
My point is he was playing lower in the lineup. No one really knew what his offensive ceiling was because he wasn't playing top line, top 6 minutes. He was a third or fourth liner. He showed that he had the flexibility to be that. So you are also taking a little bit of a gamble that his offensive upside was a little higher than it's shown to be. Now, so I want to have this one. Bruins Meat said that probably 34. So we're talking about you start to rebuild and plan to build after Bergeron and Krejci when Bergeron was 34. And then he says, or when your number one and number two centers are in their mid-30s. So 34. Bergeron is what, 38 now? Or is he 39?
Well, I don't even think he's that old. Oh, he's 39.
Okay.
He is 39.
So, Bruins Meat, what you're saying is you should have started picking his successor 5 years ago. You should have picked David Krejci's successor 5 years ago. Okay. So, here's what you'd be doing.
Well, in 34, that would have been the 2019-2020 season, a year after they went to the Stanley Cup.
Right. So, you had you took in that year John Beecher, Matthias Mantekivi, Trevor Kuntar the year later, Ryan Duran the year later. So you picked 4 true centers in those 2 years. Now, Mantekivi could also play left, and there's some flexibility there. All right. But in those 2 seasons, you had a grand total of, 2, 4, 5, 9 picks. 9 picks in 2 years because you were trying to go in while he was 34. Okay. So let's look at the following year. You picked Fabian Lysell. Okay. You want to rebuild the wings around those guys while they're still there. Because again, you've got a 5-year ramp. All right. You still took Brett Harrison and Andre Gasso. Jelvik can play the middle as well. So we'll give him credit for that. Okay. Well, Brett Harrison could be in the NHL right now if he was a little bit more physical. If he could take the body, he'd be in the NHL right now. Maybe as a left wing. But that's not on Don Sweeney for the pick. That's on the player for not liking contact. Then you took Matthew Poitras, 2nd round. Matthew Poitras can be your David Krejci replacement. You're talking about a timeline in trying to replace Patrice Bergeron. Let's assume all things hit. The guy you're drafting in that kind of window is Dean Letourneau.
Well, the other thing is, so Poitras got picked in 2022. Bergeron and Krejci both officially 100% hung up their skates at the end of the 2022-23 season. Matthew Poitras played in the 23-24 season, got injured. Had he not gotten injured, he may have already been a full season in the NHL.
Yeah. It might not be 82 games. They might have been at like 60 games.
They did plan. So they did plan for Bergeron and Krejci. It just so happens that Poitras got hurt. You know what I mean? It's so they are planning. And the other thing is, too, I'm not sure they expected Bergeron, the way he was playing, to all of a sudden be like, yeah, I'm just going to hang him
easily had
up.
2 more years in him. So that would have brought us to the 2023 draft.
He easily had the same amount of years that Sidney Crosby has in him.
Easily. Maybe one less, but that would be more of a choice. So,
right.
But you're also,
and he'd still be winning.
100%. Bergeron's. So you're talking about a timeline that you cannot pinpoint because you're saying you start planning for it at 34. Well, they were. Sometimes you don't get lucky. Sometimes, a John Beecher is what you get when you draft the best center available at that spot. But guess what? The next year, you're looking at Andre Gasso as a 7th rounder. You're looking at Oscar Jelvik as a 5th rounder. You still have other guys in your pipeline who could have, if things were. And here's the thing. You plan for 34. He comes to you at age 36 and says, you know what? I still got more time in me than I thought. I don't know. Then you got Marchand sitting there going, I'm going to play till I'm 40. Okay. Right. Well, I hope he does. But what happens if he goes out and snaps his leg next year? You think he's playing till 40? He's probably going to look at it and go, let me rehab this injury and call it a career. Let's see. Kenny says, I'm not sure if Harrison would be in the NHL if he didn't shy away from contact. Harrison actually did better this season than last. It still wasn't great. His shot, though, Kenny, is NHL caliber. That's why I said he'd be more on the wing. But he could be in the NHL. He could be if the physicality wasn't a problem.
You can't, but in Bruins meet, you're saying that just to point out that's a lot of centers drafted that never panned out. Riley Duran he played his first full season professionally this past year. He just graduated from Providence College.
Right. Like I'm at 2019, okay? The only ones that haven't panned out from that draft, you're talking Quinn Olsen, Ryan Beachkoff, Matthias Mantekivi, and Jake Schmaltz. Schmaltz is now about to turn pro. He just finished college. I think they viewed Stanek as a replacement for one of those guys. I don't think so.
The Bruins also, because they don't have a lot of high draft picks, because they don't have a lot of high draft picks because of where they compete every year and the way Sweeney and even before him trading away draft picks to build the team for a playoff run because they don't have those high draft picks. They're 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 drafting kids that are still in the Ontario Hockey League. They're drafting kids that aren't even going to college yet. They're drafting kids that, I mean, Matthew Poitras, had he not done what he did his first 9 games, he was going back to the OHL. He wasn't age eligible to go down to Providence his
That's
first
why
year.
he was in Providence this
So
year.
they kept him, he proved enough. So, but that's the whole thing with the Bruins is because they don't have those draft picks. They're picking later rounds, so it's taking longer for these kids to develop because
Real
they're
quick, Kenny,
kids.
what league does Oliver Wahlstrom play in right now? The American Hockey League. Where does Brett Harrison play? The American Hockey League. If they both had the rest of their game, whatever's missing, guess what league they'd be playing in? The National Hockey League. So yes, that's the entire point I'm trying to make, Kenny.
I'm laughing.
All right. Is if they had the complete game, they'd be NHL players. Sometimes what's lacking in the player is the will to learn the skill. All right.
That's part of what
Brett Harrison has every ability to play in the corners and win board battles. He ain't 5'3" in the corner. All right. Justin Brazeau has every ability to play in the corner.
Wait, hold on. Don't be talking about 5'3" in the corner because Brad Marchand is a little rat king who basically I could see eye to eye with. His height.
My point is Brad Marchand won those board battles.
Right.
Brett Harrison has done nothing to learn how to win those board battles because he doesn't have the will to do so. Justin Brazeau has the body to do it, 100%. Guess what? He can't skate worth a shit. And so when he goes into those board battles, it doesn't matter how hard he hits you. When he's the one who falls, you don't get the puck if you're his team. So no matter how much, Christian Konstantinsky is another great example. He has the horrible skating skills that he has, but he's shown the will to put in the work. And from last year to this year, even the year before to this year, his ability to skate has gone up drastically. He's not going to be Fabian Lysell. He's not going to skate like Lysell ever does. Okay? But he's gone from a 2 on the scale to a 5 or even a 4. But you know what? The kid's working his ass off to try. He's trying. He's doing something that Brett Harrison isn't doing with his physical game. Trying. That's not on the player. That's not on the coaches. That's on the player. Yes. Okay, Kenny. Sorry, my bad. Is that what you were laughing at? That he was agreeing with me?
Well, that and Wahlstrom at 12.
Yeah. Why is it too late for Wahlstrom, Bruins meet? What makes it too late for him? That's what I'm curious about. Because based on that logic, Ryan Donato should not be scoring 30 goals this year.
Ryan Donato was also on an Anaheim team.
No, that was Frank Vetrano. Ryan Donato was in Chicago.
Thank you.
Both
Sorry.
of them, they're both great examples. Neither one of them should be scoring 30 goals.
Right, but again, look at the teams that they're on. Who's in front of them? Who are they fighting for spots?
Nobody.
Who is Oliver Wahlstrom pushing out of the Bruins lineup?
Right now, nobody. He ain't even pushing Patrick Brown out of the lineup.
Right. So, Kenny, you're absolutely right. Oliver Wahlstrom did not have a chance in the Isle system, and that's why Donnie Sweeney brought him to Boston. He thought that he could fill a role in Boston. The problem is that because his development got stunted in New York, He's behind the 8 ball. So maybe maybe he could be one of those late bloomers, you know what I mean, that ends up, but I just don't see him beating out anyone
All right.
in
So Bruins meet. You
Boston.
said because of how much time is invested, do you see teams putting in a roster spot to have him hang around? No, that's why he's in Providence. That's why he's in Providence. He's referring to Oliver
Who is he
Wahlstrom
talking
because he
about
said it's
though?
too late for Wahlstrom. Yeah,
Are you
because I
sure?
asked what makes it too late for Wahlstrom. And he said because of
Oh,
how much time you've invested. First of all, you claimed him off of waivers, so you didn't invest anything other than cash, which, let's be honest, the Jacobs have plenty, no matter how much it costs them to turn the lights on. It cost you a waiver claim to get him. So when you say how much time you've
right.
invested in him, you've had him for less than 8 months. And he's already shown tons of improvement from when you took him on. Wahlstrom is also 24. He has time if he's willing to put in the work in the AHL for a year or two. Exactly.
So, but the other problem is though, is that Wahlstrom, do you want him on your roster or do you want Lysell on
Right
your
now, I
roster?
want Lysell.
Right. And that was right. And that was one of the biggest complaints throughout the season was that he was getting time in Boston over Lysell, over Merck, over Patra. He was getting the
So,
time in Boston, right? He probably would have benefited from being in Providence that entire time, learning the Bruins system. And then so you never know. He may come into camp next year and be 100% a different player than he was. And he could earn a fourth line. He could be your extra forward. He could earn a spot. We don't know because he came in and he learned the Bruin system. He did what you didn't want to happen with Lysell or Merck, which was learn on the fly in a
right now,
crappy
here's
team.
the thing, and I understand the fans' perspective of wanting to have Lysell in there, Merkulov in there, Patra in there. I get that, but the difference is when you take a guy like Wahlstrom off of waivers and he's in your NHL lineup for a little bit. First of all, you're getting a true assessment of where his game is at in the NHL level based on your own assessment, not how he fits in someone else's system NHL assessment. You assess him in your system for that time frame. So that's step one. And then on top of that, you have to look at the other options there. Now, when you look at Wahlstrom, no, there probably weren't a ton of teams lined up to file waiver claims on him. But if there was one other team that was, you have to make damn sure that if you want to work with this player, he's going to get through to Providence and actually get there. Mm-hmm. So some of it is the timing of it. So yes, to your point exactly as well. The roster was in so much turmoil. You're sitting there going, well, if we're going to ruin a kid, we might as well ruin the kid that we just got off waivers versus our own that we've been developing and putting more time and effort into who's still in Providence. That's part of the thinking. So there's a lot that goes in there. And again, as Kenny says, he's still 24. There's still plenty of time. Now, Bruins meet, my question to you, he says, yes, but it costs you a roster spot from developing. Who was not in Providence, who should have been in Providence because you had Oliver Wahlstrom there? That's what I'm asking you.
No, in Boston. Who was in Boston? Who should have been? Who was in Providence that you think should have been in Boston because you had Wahlstrom there?
To exactly the point we just talked about. Whose career
again,
would you rather ruin?
He didn't play top 6. He didn't play top 6 minutes. He played on your third line, fourth line, third and fourth line, right? We've already established that no Bruins fan ever wanted to see Fabian Lysell.
I mean, people wanted to see it, but it was never going to happen.
We already established. No, they didn't want him on the third line. They automatically thought he needed to be on the top 6. Let's be realistic. No one, because that was the problem. Everyone thought he was going to push out when Morgan Geekie was slow. He was going to push out Morgan Geekie. He wasn't going to take Morgan Geekie's spot. He definitely wasn't taking David Pastrnak's spot. He definitely wasn't taking Brad Marchand's spot, who was still on the team at the time when Oliver Wahlstrom was claimed off waivers. He wasn't taking Pavel Zacha's spot in the top 6. We're talking about the top 6. Wallstrom didn't play
And
in
when
the
he
top
did,
six.
it was mid-game because they were shifting things around to see what might work and if there was
Right.
chemistry there.
Right.
It wasn't a matter of that's his permanent
Right.
line.
No, and he didn't play on the power play. He wasn't playing in all situations. So who in Boston could who in Providence or who in Boston do you think, like, that's the whole thing. Like, Wallstrom didn't take a spot from Lysell or Merck or Patra, because Patra, we've already talked at nauseum about Patra being down in Providence to play every single
Right, and I
different
love
type of
Kenny's point
scenario.
here where he says Wallstrom also wouldn't have been as hated if he didn't take a million penalties. 100%. You can't suck and take penalties. Absolutely. And then Bruins mate did answer, though. He said they did have guys like Tufty, the other left wing grinder. I think he means VL, maybe, that they picked up from Washington on free agency. And then Letary, Brown, you add Wallstrom, a lot of used up spots. Okay, so exactly to what Gayle was talking about. So Tufty, fourth line grinder, whomever you're referring to, Letary and Brown, bottom six guys. That's where Wallstrom was playing. All right. The difference is Wallstrom, as a former, what was he, a 12th overall draft pick, has more offensive upside. So what you're trying to see in him is there a combination with the guys on your NHL roster that can get the best out of Wallstrom to make him that top six player that you wanted to see if you could get? The whole point was you were trying to shake things up with Wallstrom to see if he could hang in your current top six. All right, it's exactly what the third line extra spot was meant for with the way this team was going this year. You had your consistent guys, whether it was, it was Coyle and Frederick. That was your consistent third line. All right. You're telling me you'd rather have had Coyle, Frederick, and Tufty? Coyle, Brown, or Coyle, I guess Frederick, Letary, and Coyle, but Letary
But
also
you have
didn't
to
do
remember,
enough.
before Coyle got traded too, Coyle was
He
playing
got
with
moved up there,
Marchand.
yes.
Well, and Vinny came in for Lauco. Like, I don't see they traded Lauco for Vinny. I mean, it wasn't like they traded
Yeah,
a top six forward for
right.
Vinny.
And Letary, when he went to Minnesota, did he play for Minnesota or did he play for Iowa? Let's be honest. Because once a player like Vinny Letary goes to another organization and you see that he plays the similar type couple games in the NHL, mostly in the AHL, guess what? That's what he is. You're looking it up, aren't you?
Yeah, he only played 46 games for Minnesota.
How did he do?
5-4-9. Five goals, 4 assists. -7, 24 penalty minutes. Averaged 9 minutes of ice time. He averaged 13 minutes for Boston, and in 26 games was 3-2-5. Only 6 penalty minutes. I lost her.
Nothing?
Can't hear you.
Okay, now I'm back.
Oh, now you're
So
back.
I said,
Now you're
Bob
back.
is making my point. He says if
Yeah.
Vinny's on your NHL roster, your team sucks.
But he got called up. He wasn't on the NHL roster. He got called up to fill a role.
When the team sucked. So,
Right.
Bob, you're proving our point. You want Vinny Letary down in Providence. That's where you want him. He didn't play entirely down in
Right.
Providence because your team sucked. Vinny
Right.
Letary, Patrick Brown, these are the guys that made it so it was a great tank job because you
He's
got the 7th pick.
he's another guy that 7 years of NHL career, 7 years, 155 games.
You know what we call those players? They're quadruple
it.
A baseball players.
Right.
Like, and sometimes, like in baseball, you overpay them.
I don't think
No, I don't think
Lettieri
so.
was
Just said
overpaid.
sometimes. Max Jones being one.
Oh.
But
Oh, well, yeah. Well, I also think that Sweeney was hoping to hit on Max Jones the way he hit on
oh yeah,
Morgan
absolutely,
Geekie.
and it was a risk worth taking for $1 million. 100% a risk worth
Right.
taking. The other thing too is like Vinny
Right.
Lettieri is not meant, to your point, Bob. He's on your NHL roster. Your team sucks. Okay, great. So Vinny Lettieri, he is the quintessential player for a point that I made last week, and I know you love this point. He is the right now fill-in guy. He is a Patrick Brown. He is possibly Murat Hustadinov is this as well. We don't know him well enough, but he could be this. He's what Ian Mitchell is.
Mhm.
Guess what? You have 6 or 7 or 8 of these guys in Providence because when you're in a pinch, the guys who aren't ready, Daniil Missoul, not ready. Frederic Brunet, not ready. Jackson Edwards, certainly not ready. Merkulov wasn't ready, and he might be turning in one of these guys too. Liesel wasn't ready. Riley Duran, not ready. Matthew Poitras, not entirely ready for the role you want him to have. I'll file Merkulov under that. We'll put it that way. Brett Harrison might never, ever be ready. That's why you have those guys, because you have the guys who are in your system developing who aren't even AHL ready yet because they're off at college. Cole Spicer, Andre Gassot, Oscar Yelvik, Jake Smaltz. These guys are now all flooding into your Providence system at the right time because they're going to take over for Vinny Lettieri, Riley Tufte, Georgi Merkulov. And these are the guys where you sit there and you go, okay, if Cole Spicer shows what he can do in the American Hockey League, he's still a couple years away, but in the next 2 years, he's coming in. All right. And he's a great example. Or better yet, let's use Don Zlachmelis is a much better example. He's coming into Providence, and next year, let's say he has a killer season. You know what else you can do with Don Zlachmelis? Because you have a spine that has Lindholm and Middlestead and Poitras and Minton, you can trade him. Because another team is going to look at him and go, we want Don Zlachmelis. And that's where you sit there and go, great, Dallas, you need another center because Wyatt Johnson snapped his leg. Let's make a deal. Or the Islanders or San Jose.
I need a brick wall. I need a brick wall to bash my head into.
Why? Because of this comment right here. Seems like the system isn't working when no one's really breaking through. So, Bruins meet. My question to you is, who's not broken through? Because the guys that we're talking about, Vinny Lettieri, Patrick Brown, Ian Mitchell, these guys are not meant to break through. They were the fill-in guys when you were a cup contender. When you were a cup contender, if Patrice Bergeron got hurt, you were then able to move David Krejci up. You moved all of your other centers up, and you were able to bring Patrick Brown in to fill in on your fourth line so you could continue to contend. He wouldn't fuck it up for you. And then Bergeron gets healthy, and he goes back down. Guess what? On his way back down, someone claims him on waivers. You go, great. Have a nice day. Thank you for helping us out. All right? Oh, I get where he's going with it. Okay. So the next wave is not Patrick Brown and Ian Mitchell. The next wave might not even be Ty Gallagher because he's a trade piece right now. If you're able to get back in the playoffs and a team calls you on Ty Gallagher and they're willing to offer you a piece that helps your NHL roster right now, he's movable. That's why you have him. He's not Charlie McAvoy.
But Lysell has broken through. He finished the season on a high note. Now, yes, he wasn't 100% offensive that everyone thought he was going to be, but he didn't hurt your team when your team sucked. Okay. And Now that he has 12 games, they were talking about how well he played down the stretch for what they needed him to do. Now he comes into camp next year. He very well could, if they bring in another scoring forward, Lysell could start the year on your third line, and I don't hate that.
I'm trying to find lines. There it is. I'm on Money Puck right now because I also want to go back and look. If you look at Fabian Lysell on this roster, come on. He played with Husnudinov and Zacha, Geeky and Zacha and Middlestead, and Husnudinov and Lindholm. So when you're looking at his numbers, when he played with Husnudinov and Lindholm, they had an expected goals for of 0.5. Is that because Fabian Lysell sucked or because Husnudinov couldn't find the net? When he played with Zacha and Husnudinov, their expected goals was 0.2. But when he was with Geeky and Zacha, it was 0.5. It went up. His best line was Zacha and Middlestead. It was 0.8. So again, expected goals, just one statistic there. But my point is he's going to play different with Zacha and Middlestead than he is with Geeky and Zacha, than he is with Husnudinov and Zacha. Like, the point is to your...
He's going to play. It's just like he played completely different with Patra down in Providence.
Yeah. Yeah, and
when they sprung together, I don't know. I gotta go find that. Hold, please.
Bob says Zacha and Middlestead was the place for him. I agree. That was the best line he was on. But you know how you found it? By finding the 3 lines that didn't work. That's how you found it. Because if you go minutes, he spent more time... Husnudinov and Zacha, he spent about 10 minutes with. He spent 35 with Zacha and Middlestead. So what that is, if you go back and look, Husnudinov and Lindholm, about 18 and some change. They tried, and then they figured out, based on how he plays, this is who he's going to pair up with, and it worked. And Kenny says, this is a great question while you're looking up what you're looking up. He says, do you re-sign less veteran depth in Providence to allow guys like Harrison, Kuntar, Abade, Schmaltz, and Johansson to play more? That depth is also a huge reason that the team made the playoffs. See, Kenny, that's where you have to work very closely with Evan Gold, which Don Sweeney does, and you figure out which guys are the ones that you want to keep and which ones are the ones you want to move on from. For instance, unfortunately, Harrison is still under contract. Now, the good news is you don't have to worry about a salary cap in Providence to the degree that you have to worry about it in Boston. So some of those guys, actually, I'm going to pull it up because, let's see. So the guys he's asking about, Harrison is under contract. Kuntar is, I believe, under contract. Nope, he's an RFA. Abadi is able to walk, if I'm not mistaken. You know what? He might be with the Boston crew. Where is he? I don't see him on here. Schmaltz and Johansson. So guys like Schmaltz and Johansson, you want in because you haven't seen them in Providence. Schmaltz just finished up in the NCAA. It really depends on what you think he's going to be. Now, I guess the question then becomes, would you rather have Kuntar or Schmaltz? You find what you're looking up? What are you looking for?
I can't find it. Well, I was looking for, I thought I had it in one of my stories, how many points Lysell and Patra had when they were on the same line for like it was when Patra first got sent after Patra got hot. I
Oh,
thought I had it. Kenny probably knows this.
yeah, because when they both got down there, they went on a streak.
It took Matthew Patra a little bit to get going, but once he got going, the two of them were like on fire for this like huge tear. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can find it too, but
But they built
oh
this
yeah,
chemistry,
Kenny, if you got the info, I wouldn't be
and
surprised. I know exactly what you're talking about because Matthew Poitras went off for a multi-game point streak that was outrageous.
right. And it was when the two of them got paired together. So if Patra's ready next season and Lizel's ready next season, I'm not opposed to them being on your third line.
Right.
You know what I
And
mean?
I'm not opposed.
If
Again, this is where the conversation that we were having when we had the Puckpedia GM thing up is
yeah,
if the team was willing to take a step back, or if the team has the right head coach at the helm, I would not hate seeing a third line of Minton, Poitras, Lysell, because Poitras and Minton were line mates in the under 18s together, and they played very well
right.
together. All right. Lysell and Poitras had great chemistry last year in Providence together. All three have great hockey IQ and can adjust. All three.
And they have speed.
All
The
three
three
of
of
them
them
have
have
speed.
speed.
All three of them have skating ability. They all have
Vision
they
of the
have
ice.
they have so much. Like
The only thing that they
is
lack
experience. Well, that too.
protection. And protection. Experience and
But throw
protection.
them out there with
So you
Zadorov
have
on the
to have
ice.
right, but yes, it's a little bit of protection, but it's still
No, I
not full
agree.
protection because you don't want Zadorov down behind the net in the corner in the offensive zone. You need him back on the blue line. So, but like that was the thing with David Krejci, when he first really broke into the league, and we'll go back to 2009, 2010, 2011. He had
Yeah.
Lucic on his wing. You know what I mean? He had that protection because Krejci was not a big
No.
player. He wasn't a physical player.
There's a lot.
You know what I mean? So he had that. He had
There's
that
a lot of
protection
comparables to
Luch.
David Krejci with Matthew Poitras.
Yeah, I keep saying that. I 100% keep saying that.
I love the comparable. I mean,
But
if you're going from Patrick Brown to David Krejci, he's like, an 8 compared to David Krejci as a 10. Furthest away from Patrick Brown you can get, but not quite David Krejci. But you still take that. Like,
right.
it's
Yes. No, but David Krejci wasn't David Krejci when he first got in the
no.
league either. Just like Patrice Bergeron wasn't Patrice Bergeron when
Right.
he first got in the league. Neither one of them were who they were at the end of their career, at the beginning of
Right,
their
because of
career.
everything they learned along the way. And that's the thing.
Right. And they both spent time in Providence. I'm sorry, did I say that? What? Who? What? When? Where? Why? Granted, the only reason why Patrice Bergeron spent time in Providence was
Well,
during the lockout. But David Krejci definitely.
obviously the
What?
lockout caused him to go there. But how do we know if that season plays out? How do we know that he doesn't have a season similar
Right.
to what
How do we
Matthew
know that
Poitras's
it
season
didn't?
was this year, where he plays a little bit? I'd say Poitras struggled in the NHL this year. It wasn't great, it wasn't terrible, but there were struggles, and because of that, his game wasn't fully there.
Well,
And he
yeah,
goes to
because he was
Providence.
still right. And going to Providence did not hurt him at all. going to Providence 100% helped him. And anyone that thinks otherwise really does not understand the development of hockey players.
And I like Kenny's comment here. Depending on how fast he rounds out his game, Poitras and Wahlstrom were also solid together. They could be a solid pairing in the NHL. Poitras excelled with the vets who can shoot and play physical. 100%.
Right. And Wahlstrom could be, I mean, Wahlstrom's not a Lucic, but he's definitely a bigger physical guy that could protect Poitras a little bit.
I don't love the idea, but we saw his versatility. What about a guy like Mark Kastelic? If you were to do a third line, Poitras with Kastelic on the third line.
Why? Who's your fourth line?
That's where you look at like Beecher, VL, and Tufte or something like that.
No.
Kenny says Lettieri, Poitras, Merkulov with that line. Poitras held the second longest scoring record in the AHL this season. That's the one I think I might have been thinking of. But again, who's the Lettieri in Boston? Who's the Merc in Boston? Because those two guys aren't moving up with him. I think we can establish that right now. They're not moving up unless Merkulov comes in. Kool-Aid Man blows the doors off training camp. He's going back to Providence.
But again, and I hate to say it this way, and fans are not going to like it, it also depends on who they bring in free agency. Because say they do, I'll use your example, they bring in Mitch Marner. Merck is not pushing anyone out of that lineup if they bring in Matthew Marner. I mean, Matthew Marner.
Yeah.
Mitch Marner. Listen, we've been
I
going
know.
at
I
this
just
almost
noticed
3
that,
hours.
and it blew my mind. I was like, "How did we get this far into it? Like, how did we get here?" But it's been awesome. It's been fun. Bob says Zacha, Poitras, Lysell. I don't hate the line, but to your point, who's protecting them?
Right. But that's the whole thing. It really depends on who they bring in, because again, like I said, if they bring in a Marner, if they bring in a Brock Nelson, if they bring in a Jason Robertson, they bring in any of those players who in the top 6, they're not pushing anyone out, right? So then your third line has to be Poitras, Lysell, maybe Wahlstrom, maybe Zacha, you know what I mean? So then Kastelic has to be your fourth line, because then where's Fraser Mitten?
Yeah.
I would rather have Fraser Mitten on my third line than Mark
Yes,
Kastelic.
I agree with that. And
so it starts with who's your coach, who do you get in free agency,
and
because that's going to determine. Because then the other thing is too, is if they get someone in free agency, then who's to say they don't package Merck with someone else?
Or who's to say you don't need Merkulov on your
for
third line?
for another defenseman?
Who's to say you don't like Merkulov and a 4th round draft pick could get you Ian more out of LA, probably, and they could use the forward depth.
So I mean, those are the
like.
So those are the things that, and then maybe Mark gets his shot, but it's not with Boston.
And things also just got shaken up. I mean, do you really think the New York Islanders are planning on having the 1st overall draft pick? That can change things for them, because I agree. Schaefer's probably the best player in the draft, but what if they're high on Misa? And you know what? They've had a contentious relationship in the past with Matt Barzal. Does that mean they're going to trade Barzal? Not necessarily, but the option's not off the table either. So what if Barzal becomes available in trade? Maybe not necessarily to Boston, maybe to Boston. They've had interest in him before. You know, what if
it could be a 3-team
deal. Another name that's going to throw things around. You know, he might end up going to Anaheim because of his coach there, but Jonathan Toews is going to be coming back into the league. Someone's going to take a chance on him, and that's going to shake up their lineup. So there are so many variables. I threw Jason Roberts' name out there Robertson's name out there a couple weeks ago. I know Mitch Marner is the name that bothers the living crap out of you as a free agent, but I plan on looking at all these other rosters to see, because it's Matthew Tkachuk blindsided everybody for the most part. All of a sudden, one day it was, he's not happy here, he wants out. Boom. It's not always a matter of who wants out, but what if Nazem Kadri wants out of Calgary? I'm not saying Boston takes him, but it's going to shake things up.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm saying it shakes things up.
I don't want him.
So
right.
Another team that, I don't know, might need a center, Nashville Predators. Like, they have Philip Forsberg. He's better as a wing. Stamkos, clearly better as a wing right now. Marchessault on the wing. Ryan O'Reilly's their number one center right now. Okay. If I'm Nashville, I look at a Matthew Poitras and I go, I wouldn't mind him learning from Ryan O'Reilly. Especially given the fact that I have a few extra draft picks. I could give up a second-round pick, which is what Boston used to pick them. Bruins mentions restricted free agent Matthew Knies. I don't think there's an offer that makes sense.
There's an kind of an unwritten rule. They don't do offer sheets against other
I love
teams.
this line idea, Knies, Poitras, Lysell, but even still, like, what's the contract that you're giving Matthew Knies? Because as soon as you give me the contract, I'll give you the compensation and go, I don't want to give up both.
Yeah, but the problem is if Knies receives an offer sheet from
anyone,
Brain Cramp.
Toronto.
Who's this team? Toronto. Thank you. If he receives an offer sheet from Toronto, no team, it's kind of like that unwritten rule. They're not gonna give him an offer.
I know,
you know what I
that
mean?
last year we saw St. Louis do it to Edmonton with Broberg and Holloway, and maybe that opens the door for it to happen. But you have to look at each situation. Like, okay, so the whole point of why you're sniping Matthew Knies from Toronto is to put them over a barrel if they also sign Mitch Marner. First of all, they have to sign Mitch Marner for this to be an issue. Mitch Marner is clearly going to test unrestricted free agency, which means he's automatically getting a 7-year deal at that point from anybody. Because once he hits the unrestricted free agency, that 8th year option is no longer there for Toronto either. So you have to ensure that they're going to sign Marner in order for the reason for this. Okay, so you said $8 million for Matthew Knies. If you make that offer sheet, Toronto lets you take him all day of the week, every day of the week, because you're giving up 2 firsts, a second, and a third just to sign him to that contract. And if I'm Toronto, I say thanks for all the picks, because I can trade those picks for a player who's better than Matthew Knies, regardless of what my cap situation is. By the way, so it's just that's not worth the draft compensation. I actually wrote a piece about what an offer sheet to Matthew Knies would look like, and you're realistically looking in that 6.5 range for 5 years, just so that you don't have the AAV go too high, but you're still looking at a first, a second, and a third round draft pick. There are only a small handful of teams that can do that and look at the draft compensation and go, we're going to be okay, because they already have other first, second, and third round picks in 2026. They're 2026 draft picks, don't forget. So, like Chicago, for instance, or Utah as another example. They got prospects coming out the ass. They can't sign all of them. So for them to give up a couple draft picks that they're not going to be able to use, that's not a terrible move for those guys. For the Bruins, you need those draft picks. You don't have the prospects that they have. You don't have back-to-back 4th overall draft picks if you're the Utah Mammoth at this point. Which, by the way, what do you think of the name? We never had that question.
I don't like it.
Stupid cooler company. Would you rather have them in the Utah Yeti?
I don't like it. I don't know what I expected, but I don't like the mammoth, and I don't
Would
like
you
the
rather
logo.
Utah Yeti? Fair
No.
enough. I just think it's funny that the cooler company, when people aren't going to know what you're talking about, like, you know, they're the same.
Yeah.
I look at it and I go, you should have freaking worked with them. Talk about a marketing opportunity. Utah Yeti.
Yeah, but what were they gonna have? Like a cup as the
No, what I'm
logo?
saying is if they have, the behemoth whatever dude as their mascot, he can walk around the stadium carrying a Yeti cooler. Like,
That's true.
come on, the Yeti uses a Yeti. It writes itself. Instead, they went, we have the copyright. Meh, meh, meh. Like, come on. And think about this. If they did that, how many people in Utah are going out and buying Yeti coolers?
Well, Yeti is Yeti.
I
They
know.
they they sell
I know, but
themselves.
still, people would go out and get them because you get to put the mascot on it and all that other fun stuff. But nope, we get the mammoth, which is meh, meh.
Right.
Although they're a team that might move that pick. I worry about the teams that are going to be overly aggressive to get a pick like that. Not necessarily Boston, but like I could see Pittsburgh doing something stupid like that.
Pittsburgh doesn't need it. Pittsburgh has 11
But what I'm
picks
saying is I
this
could see them
draft.
packaging 3 of those picks and moving up to 4th.
I don't agree with you. I don't think Kyle Dubas is gonna if he's gonna package those picks, he's packaging for a player right now. He's not packaging them for a
Fair.
future player. He's packaging them for someone because
Unless he gets the pick
he
to flip
has
it. Unless he
Crosby
gets
and
the pick to
Malkin.
flip it to someone else, but
But he has Crosby and Malkin that he needs to build around. So he's at the Bergeron
yeah.
Krejci era that he needs to build
Oh,
around
you
and
mean
make
they
that
should be
push for another
drafting
cup.
their replacements right about now? They
Yeah.
actually kind of already have one in house. I think they have their Malkin replacement in Sam Poulin. That kid has been, I mean, solid in Wilkes-Barre Scranton for a couple years now. Yet he would have had a never-ending NHL deal with Utah. That's my point. I'd offer a second to move up, take it or leave it. uh, there's just I don't know.
Dude, I love you, and I could go on for on and on and
I
on.
know. I know. I
3
was just gonna
hours.
say let's wrap this up. So
3 hours.
I'm going to take a deeper dive into who's going to be available, who could be available via the trade market, just because I do think it's going to be a massive offseason for player movement. I mean, we just saw Mikko Rantanen get moved. Like, no one's off the table at this point. So I'm going to kind of dive into that. We've got to figure out the next time we're going to do something, but this has been super fun, as always. Probably the fastest 3 hours of my last week and a half. Not gonna lie, except for maybe the last show. But yeah, any final thoughts from you as we head off into the evening of Bruins freedom?
Mitch Marner is not coming to Boston.
I don't think so either.